Tactical Crouch, episode 182. Another week of Overwatch League matches underway. We got a lot of great results coming up. We have teams that are basically decided shoo-ins for the tournament itself, for the regional knockouts. We have teams that are bombed out. We got a lot of changes happening in some of these rosters as well. Some great news coming up this week as we head into the final week of regular season gameplay for our tournament cycle once again, fellas.
Yeah, it's kind of shaping up to be quite the interesting bout. You know, one true king reigns in the East, while the West has a bit of a race for the throne. So we'll have to see who kind of takes home the pennant.
I like that analogy, by the way. So I want to add in, it's just like, the one true king coming in, and I like that it's Shanghai Dragons, because it really is just the Targaryens flying over into Westeros, just torching up the entire region, and nothing can touch them. So that's really kind of what I'm seeing it as.
Except themselves, isn't that like a big plot thread? Am I right, Game of Thrones fans? Hello?
I feel like the one-eyed is just like the king among the blind, just what APAC feels to me right now. Like, I don't know if it's like as glamorous as Targaryens or whatever, like, most of the time, it's pretty bad Overwatch that's being played over there, right?
Dragons being. What do you mean bad Overwatch?
It hasn't been horrible.
Bad compared to Shanghai. When you're getting crushed by Shanghai, you're gonna look bad.
Yeah.
Everyone looks bad versus Shanghai. What do you mean? I don't understand.
I think everyone just looks bad every game, unfortunately, right?
That's not true.
Like, not Shanghai, of course, but like.
Yeah.
The problem with Shanghai is they also have a small region where they can't really adapt to any feasible strategies. So they, like, in order for them to win, they almost have to learn the game during Hawaii weekends. And they've impressively done so, but like the rest of the time, it's just like.
That's why it's their era. Come on.
Dude, you say small region, and then you forget contenders' careers right there. With a lot of teams that, dare I say, of equal footing, maybe not to Shanghai, but equal to like most of the Overwatch League teams in the region.
Easily
mid-pack, but they're not even playing the same meta, right? Most of the time. Or like,
what do you mean? We're out of hero pools. During hero pools, you can't scrim contenders team, but now you're out of hero pools. It's perfect.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So my point is anyone saying like, oh yeah, well Shanghai's got no one to practice against? Like, bro, they could be playing O2 Blast and whoever the fuck and getting mad practice. Like you were getting really damn good practice there. The fact that APAC has access to contenders Korea and the top of contenders China when they're good as well is such a heavy boon compared to NA when the best you can do is play against American Tornado. And don't get me wrong, that's good practice, but outside of that, you're playing against American Tornado Odyssey and then just like it just goes down. It's just like you're really getting good practice versus the rest of those teams. And even then, like put O2 Blast and American Tornado in a boxing ring, like. I'm sorry, but history has proven that the Korean teams slap all other regions at the contenders level, like, time and time.
By the way, I think as a team, you gotta count Talon towards that. Like, Talon was slapping kids last season in scrims.
Could do. Like, I'd say maybe the top of Shanghai or the top of China, to be honest.
My point is that I am not a fan of this narrative. Like I don't know where did this even start? Like everyone's like, oh yeah, APAC is so bad, and now that's just like the fan narrative. And you know how fan narratives start? They get an inkling from somewhere, and then it just spreads, and no one really knows why. You talk to them, it's like no one can actually tell you. Like, okay, why do you think APAC is bad? It's like I don't know. The other guy said that, so I'm just going to agree with that. Again, people are sheep, right? So people just agree with what the other guy says. And once the public narrative is that apparently APAC is bad, that's what everyone says, even though no one can actually answer that question. No one can actually tell you why they think that.
I mean, yes, that is true. But for instance, like take Philly or take Seoul. Where do you think they would land in NA? Are you confident they would be a top 5 team in NA? I'm not.
Who's top 5?
Seoul's a coin flip, but I think Philly would be comfortably top 6.
I think Philly could argue. Yeah, I would say Philly could be.
You know what the most stupid take I saw? This really infuriated me. People like, oh yeah, Paris would be the second best team in APAC, and some people even said Paris would beat Shanghai. I'm like, you guys are blind. That's just like, no offense against Paris. Like, I think they've done a great job. But like, people discredit APAC so hard. Yep. It's like, motherfucker, they just beat Dallas. What? How are you stupid? Did you like?
I mean, I guess the argument is it's only Shanghai, right? Like, and then
Yeah,
There's
but
a
then, no
long
one should
gap.
say Paris, like, how are there anybody saying that Paris would be the best team in APAC? That's the
No,
dumbest take I've ever
that's
heard.
dumb as hell. Yeah.
Who's saying that? Like, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah. No, that's stupid, especially with Shanghai. But I don't know, like everything else below that feels like
just like how it does in
Toronto,
NA.
Boston to you.
No, definitely not. I think Glads would struggle against either Seoul or Philly, 100%.
No way.
Without a doubt in my mind.
Seoul have peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
Seoul at their peaks would be very competitive. Seoul in their troughs,
Agreed.
Yeah.
bad luck. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That's where I lean on Philly. Is way more consistent now that they have their full roster. I think they're only going up from here.
But like, you know, but there's some like peaks and trough teams in NA, for example, Mayhem. And that'll be one of our main talking points. But guys, that was a decent intro. Before we get into our real talking points here, massive shout out to our patrons who brought us or are bringing us episode 182. So, Refined Bean, Fordino, Battle Crab, Lolshin, Rexane, Sir Girthalot, Porkchop Sammy, Casher67, Chara, Nathan, Your Misery, Fable Steven, Roger B, Chris R34444, Ons Babuhal, Hunter Tane, Yeskas, Orpus, Scented Shao, Gel Chonk. You guys, this is dedicated to you, episode 182. So, mentioned Mayhem as one of those topsy-turvy teams as well. They are on a pretty massive loss streak right now. What is it at? How many games are lost in a row now? It's 4 from this stage. And
I think we're going into 5.
If we go back, it would have the last win would probably be the one against the London Spitfire. You have to go as far
7
as
games. So they're currently 0-7 right now in terms of the recent games. So this team, and we talked about Mayhem last episode in terms of really exploring the capability of them not really making Summer Showdown, if we're going to be clear about it. We did talk about the fact that they probably don't make Summer Showdown, but we had maybe some high hopes that they would do some damage in their last 2 games, and they did some damage versus Dallas, but they got damaged pretty hard by Washington to the point where they're 0-4 now next to Vancouver Titans, so it's a weird look to see Florida Mayhem all the way down there. Yaki's put out a tweet like, I'm going to take a break. There was that other tweet as well, where 2 members of the Florida Mayhem are just straight, knees on the floor, just bowing in apologetically to their fan base for their performances, which I think that I get it. That's maybe part of Korean culture or something like that. But it's to me, looking at it from a Western POV, it seems like a bit of an extreme response. But I understand from their POV, like it's getting kind of brutal out there for Mayhem. Yeah. And now where their overall standings are at what? How many points are they again? They are down pretty bad.
4, right?
They are currently sitting at 4 and 8.
5 points.
And they're really down in 10th place currently. They only have 4 more matches. You have to be top 9 to make the play-ins for the actual end-of-year playoffs. So they need to do a lot of work next stage to bring it back around. But let's get into it. Mayhem. Checkmate coming into play for OG. Played the entire time. He's been dubbed the Chadmate. And there's both good things and bad things here because on the good side, he looks like Bumper. On the bad side, he looks like Bumper.
Yeah, that is a good analogy, a good comparison. It's unfortunate because coming into this week, it seemed like you could excuse a lot of Florida's performance because they had such a weird week. You go immediately from playing a team that's running all this rush stuff to a team that's playing a lot of dive with Toronto. It's tough to prepare for that. You give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Okay, we go into the middle of the week and we've lost a main tank. All right, sweet. I guess we just throw it out the window and we just kick a field goal from 100 yards away. Like that doesn't work, guys. I don't know how many times we have to kind of hash this over. I get that Florida's probably in a sticky situation where they need to bring somebody in for whatever reason. They have to kind of rely on players that haven't, necessarily started on main tank before.
They have a tank issue. I never thought this team had a tank issue.
No, I don't think it's a tank issue. I think OG. I'm not going to completely speculate on what happened, or what has happened with this team, but it seems like somebody needed a break or there was just something not working, needed to step away for some time. I don't know. There's not enough information to really even try to speculate. But if you have to remove somebody, what do you do at this point in the season? Do you have enough time to sign somebody? I genuinely wonder if Kuki could like finagle a player contract.
I think in all essence, they did the right thing. I don't think there's a better solution unless you can magically untilt.
Like I thought, Joe. I thought you were about to say. There's maybe a chance Kuki just steps in and plays because he was a main tank, wasn't he? So
no, that's what he wanted to say. Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, I'm like, okay,
Kuki plays.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how it would work logistically, but if this team is going to save the season, Checkmate can't continue. The Orisa, sure, you put them on it. You could try to make it work. I don't think it's dynamic enough to be able to hope that it'll last through a hero pool. I think the team... No. And that's where it's like, okay, you genuinely are tanking the season if you continue running this. You have to understand that.
Any team that has ever done this has been an extreme measure.
Yeah.
Like something is going on. If this is your option, this is the option you're going for. You're putting your DPS player on a main tank.
Mm-hmm.
This is like when Moon moved Kuki to main support and they bench Custard. It just feels like
this is like Taimu tank. This is Ryu Jaehong tank. This is Haksal on Lucio. This is like every bizarre role swap that is just inane. Usually is not a good sign of confidence, right? Something you cannot, if you genuinely believe that you can salvage this season, it can't be with Checkmate. At least not with what he's shown right now.
I think they were doing a band-aid solution for this stage. I think the real work happened. This is the copium.
Hopefully.
Copium is that the real work happens behind the scenes now during the break, the very long break before Countdown Cup, where you imagine they figured it out.
Have to.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Kuki. I don't know if it's a 30-day for like an NA player. You bring him in just to give somebody a chance.
This is a full Korean team.
I know.
Team dynamic.
I know.
Can't do anything.
No, there's legitimately not a better option available. Like what you could think about, the only other feasible idea that people had was bringing in Takoyaki and having them play on ping. It's likely the only thing that you can feasibly do at this point.
Ping would be so high.
And I don't think
he was on high ping from Korea to China. Like he couldn't even play with Hangzhou Spark on ping.
Yeah. And I think that might legitimately be even worse than Checkmate. So
I would say so, yeah.
Like if you are at a point where you decide that there's no way you can continue with OG, then I don't see a more feasible solution for the Florida Mayhem than what they've gotten with. I've debated it. I don't think Cookie makes sense. I think you possibly screw the respect that players have for that for the head coach for future seasons. So you're messing with results there. I don't think like forcing OG makes sense. I don't think putting anyone else on the roster and then switching it up. Like for instance, you could think like let Checkmate play and then I don't know who would even pick it up then. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, right? Like there's just there aren't any great options for Mayhem. And I will say it almost worked against Dallas, right? And it actually worked decently in their run-up in the scrim environment that they were in. So
you've
I don't know. I feel like the result against Dallas almost like yes, Justice was a complete wash, no pun intended, but like I feel like the Dallas game already kind of justifies what they did there.
Is that Florida overperforming or Dallas underperforming or what?
I mean both, but
or a little bit of both.
There's a reason why teams underperform against you, right?
Oh, of course.
It's basic. Like they basically the worst swordsman. Like the best swordsman has to fear the worst swordsman in the world, right? Like type of thing. Yeah, that's basically what happened. They're just like this kid.
What they're doing.
This kid took a coin, put it on his shift key, and just like went into the lobby. That's basically the game. And it almost.
I want to put to bed something real quick as well, just for the people listening, because they might be confused and they might actually legitimately think Kuki could come in and play. Kuki, I don't think could actually play unless he was on a player contract. So they would have to give him a player contract first. And there's a bunch of stuff behind the scenes there where it could be difficult. I don't know what visa he's on. I don't know if he's covered visa wise. I think you need to be on a P1 professional athlete visa to be playing anyway. And if Cookie's not on that visa, he legally can't play. So we'll put that to bed really quickly.
Yes.
So it is at best difficult for Cookie to play. At worst, it's just completely illegal. Like legally, he can't do it. So we'll put that to bed real quick.
Agreed.
I guess you could like roll around with $1 million and try to buy Smurf, or like $500,000 and try to buy Django. Like I don't know why direct competitors for anything would give you their.
If that was an option, I think they would have already done it.
Yeah, I think that definitely would have already happened. It's either. So okay, let me address the whole like Arisa thing, right? Like. Yes, it looked okay versus Dallas. It could be underperforming or it could be overperforming. Regardless, I thought that actually they were pretty coordinated, which is something that was kind of lacking for them from last week, which is great. They seemed kind of on the same page. The only time they really found imminent success was with that Arisa pick. Now, let's look at the list of main tanks we've had historically over the Overwatch, competitive Overwatch history, right? You have Winston, Ryan, Arisa. Maybe you can count Sigma, regardless.
And Ball.
Sigma Ball, right? You go into a hero pool next stage. You can't ban Ryan, which is probably one of his worst heroes that we've seen thus far. Granted, it's a small sample size. If Arisa's banned, which it doesn't seem likely just because of the play rate, this kid's out of. I mean, he's out of sorts. What do you do?
So you don't like the Chad mate, is what I'm getting.
God no. God, no. I think it could maybe improve over time depending on the rest of the meta, but I'm almost, and I think this is what we kind of saw versus Washington. I'm kind of almost more interested in seeing Gargoyle move over and having Checkmate play flex.
Oh, but the problem is now you're moving 2 people instead of just 1.
Agreed.
Yeah. Nah.
It's a shot in the dark. I don't know. Maybe they've scrimmed it and it doesn't work, but it's either you do some crazy stuff, which they kind of already have, or you already start planning for next season because this is not going to work.
Oh, well, next season. How about let's start with Countdown Cup? I think you give them benefit of the doubt in the break now that maybe count. Okay, if Checkmate comes back on tank in Countdown Cup, it's done. It's really done. But Florida right now, their primary goal is to make 9th place in North America to get to the play-ins and give themselves a shot.
They've got Atlanta, they've got Boston, they've got Glads, they've got Houston.
They probably need one or 2
task.
wins out of this.
Yeah, you have
in
to.
order to have a chance.
That's probably minimum. Like if you want to clear the bar, I think you probably want like a 3-1 like
the bar final. Is Boston. The next team above them is Boston, sure. And actually Atlanta's 5-5 as well.
Yeah.
So those are the teams they need to clear. So I would say if you can beat those 2 teams, you should be in the clear. Yeah, then go ahead and lose to Houston, whatever. You're not catching up to them. I mean, those wins will be helpful, but really, if you can just beat Boston, Atlanta, who you said to the matches, right? I think that could be enough for Florida to get in. So really, it's that opening week for Florida, which is week 17. They come into the second week Countdown Cup. They get to have an early look at what the meta is for other teams that they're going to be playing.
They do have a big break to be here.
Houston Gladiators might be a bit of a write-off, but those first 2 games, that first weekend, super important for the Mayhem and will dictate the entire the rest of their season. So
they do get an extended break. Now. Week 16, they're off. So not only do they not play until Countdown Cup, but they have the first week off, which is great for them. They do get that, like AVRL saying, they do get that big read. But it's like, okay, let's just take Atlanta and Boston for a moment. Let's just throw in Ryan into the hero pool and say, okay, this is the meta where it's going to be centered around Ryan. Do I really want to play Checkmate against Gator Ryan? Do I really want to play Checkmate Arisa versus Atlanta Arisa?
Why can't they just play OG?
Why isn't he playing now? I don't know. It's
that's why I'm thinking like could they not, is there something they can do behind the scenes on them to get
maybe
OG
it's
back
just a break. Maybe. Hopefully it is. It would be a shame because this team doesn't feel like it's it doesn't feel like a bottom team.
So when Florida made the midseason update tweet and announcement to say that Checkmate was going to come in, OG retweeted that and quote tweeted. He said BRB exclamation mark. There was a space between the BRB and the exclamation mark. I'm not going to read into that. BRB space exclamation mark.
I would like you to though. I would like your Freudian interpretation of the space, please.
I was never going to, but I just for some reason I thought it'd be good to say that. His next tweet 3 days later was saying checkmate going hard like bumper Lamau with 3 zeros, 3 O's, which I'm also not going to read
the
into.
Significance of 3. It's just
the amount of map wins they got versus Washington.
True. Ouch. The amount of points lost.
Oof. Yeah. I mean, the amount of map wins they would have gotten with OG is also 0 across both series.
So I just don't know. I don't know what's going on with OG. But yeah, their options are the best option is to ideally fix that, get OG back in time, win versus Atlanta and Boston as a minimum, get yourself into the 9th place, and cross your fingers for plans from there.
Yeah. It's a shame, but yeah, it's
already so hard. Like your direct composition. Like let's look at this the table, right? So they currently have 5 wins. Uprising also has 5. They are still playing Titans, and they have way more matches left, right? Like 2 more matches. Eternal at 6. They got London left, and then also I guess Boston and like Defiant. It's not that. Not that hard of a rest of the schedule. Defiant also has London left, right? Justice. Yes, Justice has Titans left. Like you gotta win at least 1 in order to be equal.
To be even. Yeah.
And I don't know where the second win would even come from. You gotta like just knock it out of the park for the rest, right?
Hero pools could be crazy. There's roads to Florida making 9, but those roads are real narrow. Like they are sheer cliff. God, I hope you don't have a fear of heights. You're teetering. There's wind blowing. There might be some goats just hanging out. I don't know. Like it's a tough ass to see them get to like play-ins. That's hard.
Yeah,
it would be a beautiful story if they could.
Somebody's going to miss out. Somebody in NA is going to miss out. It's between Florida, Boston, and Atlanta. One of these 3 teams probably miss out. Unless something really wild happens and you get like a Paris or Toronto that really shit the bed in the next stage. Yeah. Or like a Washington who are on the same scoreline. You would need another team to bomb 0-4 and then for Florida to catch up big time. But
Justice might. I mean, it depends.
Yeah, I think
Justice might be that team.
I mean, even if they are and they go 6-8. You still they would have to go 6-10. Even if they go 6-10, you would need Florida to be at minimum 6-10 themselves to get into a tiebreaker. If not,
they still got Titans on the last day, right? Like they're basically already 7-9. Yeah.
So then Florida. So that's going to be it. So really, we're looking at Florida finishing the season probably on 6-10. And they will be looking for a tiebreaker versus Boston or Atlanta on a 6-10. Because we're expecting Boston Atlanta to at least win 1 more here. They'll probably be on at least 6-10. There's no way. Like I don't think either Atlanta or Boston finish on 5-11, which is the scoreline that Florida need them to be. So Florida have to at minimum win 2, and then beyond that, probably actually win 3 to put themselves on 7-9.
Yeah,
I think 6-8 is the minimum, but 7-9 is where you can start feeling a little bit better, and that would require them to go 3-1 in that stage. So it's going to be rough, guys. But this has been a long discussion on Florida Mayhem. So I'm going to move on to something that DPay said also on Florida Mayhem and also on Shock. He said, "Hot take: Mayhem and Shock are not massively underperforming. The quality of gameplay and competition in NA has just gone up a ton. Instead of flaming those guys, why not applaud the teams doing well this year? I swear the Overwatch community has been more and more negative." So this one's a 2-parter. Part 1 is to kind of say that there are teams underperforming and the quality of the region has gone up. And the part 2 is like, you should be, instead of flaming teams doing poorly, they should be applauding teams doing well, which is the second part I can heavily agree upon. I think the first part is the contentious part where people are going to argue for and against.
Yeah, I don't think you can look at the Shock's performance recently or not immediately recently. I do think they've kind of started to get their stuff together a little bit, but within the last maybe 3 to 4 games. You cannot bold-faced look at that and tell me that that is not an underperformance. Same thing with the Florida Mayhem as of late. You have OG kind of rolling and dying all over the place. The coordination just isn't there for these teams. That is an underperformance. So to the degree that the community kind of claims that it is, I think that's debatable, and I think that's kind of what he's getting at. But I'm kind of semanticing, lawyering him. But yeah,
I think Shock's result this stage is actually quite reasonable. They lose in a close game to Gladiators, who always had the potential to be a very high-performing team. They beat London, who they were supposed to beat, and
there was nothing reasonable about that match. Yeah,
yeah, okay. And I was going to address that because people are going to say like, oh yeah, it was a 5-map series, it was too close and all that. It's like, I get it. That definitely came too close for comfort. They beat Paris more convincingly, another team they were expected to beat, and then they lose to Houston, a team that they've lost to in the past, and it's not out of question. Like, if we ignore the scorelines for just a second for the sake of just looking at the matchups, losing to Glads in Houston and beating Paris and London for a team like Shock, I think is not a surprising result at all. I don't look at that and think, wow, that's really awful from how can Shock do that? I think that's like, actually, that's about right. That's about correct.
I think it's all like narrative expectations where it's like Shock, 2-time defending champions. Look at this roster. Look at the coach. How are they losing versus a team like Houston, who I think kind of heads up the opposite, where it's like subtly actually doing extremely well for themselves, but have never actually made like a tournament final. So you kind of drop them off during play-ins. They've done well all stage. They've done well all stages. You never really see them in like big stakes matches. So you kind of write them off anyways as like middle of the pack, mediocre, when they're not. They're actually a top team. Like, you have to give them that Houston. At this point. Yeah, Houston.
This is probably where I do agree with DP a little bit, in the sense that I think the region has leveled up. I think the league has leveled up in various ways.
Agreed.
And the entire expectation and narrative of the Shock 3-peat kind of needs to die now. Anyone still holding onto the Shock 3-peat narrative is just like, you haven't been paying attention.
Yes, you are a doomsayer.
This Shock roster is not a 3-peat capable roster, in my opinion. And I know that's going to sound like a real big hot take, because people are going to go, oh, but Arns is back and all that kind of stuff. It's like, we'll see. He needs like a strong Widowmaker and all that kind of jazz. Yeah. This team still needs to figure out their identity a little bit. They need to figure out their backline. They need to figure out who's playing Lucio. So what I'm saying is, like, if you look at the Shock under a different lens, if you look at the Shock under the 3-peat lens, you're like, how do we lose here? But if you're looking at it from the lens of like, actually Shock is like an upper middle of the pack team, which I'm currently looking through that lens, these results, as I just said, are very standard. This is a very normal, like, neutral result for me, where they beat the teams they were supposed to beat and lost to teams that have higher that are at least as good as them, as not, if not better.
Yep. It's a tough street. I think the problem that I had with the tweet was that it felt like two problems that were mutually exclusive rather than like somehow interwoven. Whereas like, yeah, NA has leveled up, but also these were underperformances. Like, we can't ignore that. Like, these were bad performances from these like teams that should be performing well. Checkmate being on main tank, and even before that, OG playing, it wasn't great. These teams have been kind of all over the place. I think you can say both, but the community is very much lopsided in terms of like just leaning on, hampering the underperformances, or leaning more on the underperformances than necessarily, cheering on the Houstons, the Atlantas to a degree. Boston, I suppose. Dallas, I think gets the praise that they deserve. But
I think this comes from the Gladiators Shock game, where Gladiators won 3-2, and probably the community narrative is more along the lines of like, oh, Shock must have choked this game, rather than, oh, Gladiators played well, right? That's, I think, probably what really spawned this response from David.
I think, I don't know, I wouldn't paint it that hard, but I think there always has been like a trend of the community. And we address them like they're some sort of hive mind. They're not. Like, they're all individual people with individual thoughts. But it seems to be a trend that more so that teams
they gotta
lose.
Stop copying each other. That's what they really are. They need to stop copying each other and have some individual thought. But yeah, continue.
They it's usually a trend that teams lose rather than teams win, or another team won, if that makes sense, right? Like too much is, oh my god, they choked, oh my god, they underperformed, they don't have a good meta read, versus wow, this team actually performed really well. I had that same kind of takeaway from like Charge Seoul. Granted, that's later on, where it's like, wow, Charge actually like looked kind of decent. Seoul just kind of brought it back and actually found their footing later on into the match. Like there's more to these games than just like team lose, team win. And it's, I don't know how to change that. I don't know how to like create a better vehicle so that people kind of see this development over time. I don't know if the desk can do a better job. It's difficult because I actually think they've done narrative. Right,
it's all narrative. If you're the narrative in your brain says that Gladiators is an average team and that Shock is a three-peat worthy team, then you are like heavily upset by this 2-3 loss, and you in your mind they're like, there's no way, like Shock must have hard choked this. So that if that's what your narrative is, then you spin it in a way where like you can't celebrate the Glads win because in your mind they shouldn't have won.
Yeah, and I think it's down to them not making tournaments and stuff, right? That's probably like the
100%.
the thing that taints it a little bit. That said, like I don't know, it's weird, and this is not at all factually based, but like I don't know if we have teams that are as good, relatively speaking. So, okay, let's define this, right? Yes, in context, like good and bad is like doesn't work without each other. It's like the same coin, right? Like you can't have good teams without bad teams.
Sure,
and
agreed.
The evaluation is happening in relation to one another. So I understand that from a coaching perspective, you probably look at this and you just go like, okay, so like everyone's just doing more, like preparing more, blah, 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 blah. The circumstances are harder. You got to do it that way. Like that's why there's more parity perceived. At the same time, I don't know if I'm watching like the best teams in the world play, especially, or maybe for the Dallas Shanghai, it's not, but I'm not sure if I'm getting the same feeling of like high quality Overwatch that I get from having watched like, you know, Titans Shock in season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like we do not have great teams at the moment.
Can I say that's partially due to the fact of mastery of meta? You don't have hero pools and you don't have stages that changes the meta every single time. You don't have this big reset button. You have teams that can reach a higher potential, and this has been a conversation topic that's been talked to death in the past as well. And part of the proponent of why I prefer to keep, you know, the format as it was without hero pools, for the sake of maybe it's a little bit boring, but you have teams that can get really damn good.
Yeah,
and so you get this like masterclass level Overwatch because you have two teams that pushed each other to the very top and both absolutely like reached the 100% mark of what you could achieve in GOATs.
Yeah. It's like, it's the difference between like watching, I don't know, like a proper professional dance competition at like the Olympics and watching like Dancing with the Stars. Like, yes, they have professional coaching. They just haven't had the time and everything. They might even have talent. They just haven't had the time. So when I'm watching the performances, there's like, oh, why is this guy not rotating with his team? Like, why is there a hiccup? Why is it not smooth? Like, why is he there? Like, or why is there not like the diva covering that? Or like the old timing is clearly not, why are we doubling up supporters? Or stuff like this, right, happening. Where like in those high, like it just feels different. It feels in sync to watch like really honed Overwatch. And I feel like I even got to see that more in season 3 than I'm now, even though it doesn't make any sense. Like I felt like watching, especially like playoffs, felt much more refined than whatever I'm watching right now, even though like, I don't know.
Some bias there because playoffs is the end of the year when teams should have the highest level of mastery over their own capabilities and their own team, because your own roster, you've had your entire season to gel with your roster now and work out your issues. You even compare Shanghai today versus Shanghai preseason, way different in terms of their quality of the team. And by the end of the season, I'm sure they'll be even better. The point is, I think comparing playoffs caliber teams where they've had an entire season to get that good is like, that's not a fair comparison.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
I don't even know if I'd agree with that. Like that's like hog stuff. Like you thought that was like thought out and methodical.
Much more
That
so than a lot of the time what we're seeing right now. Like the way like Jetsha had to find flanks when there's like 2 flanks in Overwatch at any given time. It's like timing based, and towards the end, like to make that work, yeah, I thought that was much more coherence needed than whatever like bullshit simcoms we're doing right now. Like right now,
see,
like
I appreciate that.
You see people like not in sync pressing the teleporter and stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's a weird skill that a lot of teams haven't gotten. But like when you see good sim TP coverage and like interesting use of it, I think like for example, I think a lot of people will attach like the checkmate, like charge TP, do the cool little TP shatter move, stuff like that, to that as like, okay, if you do that, you must be like comfortable and good with it. No, a lot of it's just really boring, like covering chokes where you don't get Maywalled, or you get out of Blizzard, or you do all these like little quick movements, bursts of movements, or placing the teleporters in positions that they can't just instantly get burst. They're really, really boring, but they're actually super impactful. And I don't know that they get highlighted enough. Maybe that could be like the solution. I don't know.
Is the argument that the sim stuff is like not coordinated and it's just kind of, it looks kind of bad. Like I'm trying to nail down where the argument
is.
It
just doesn't. Yeah. I mean, it's not about sim inherently. It has a lot of potential to show up coordination. It just doesn't do that even for the top teams. Like,
my reason for this, and this is what I said also. If we go back a couple of episodes to what I said about the June Joust meta, is because of hero pools and the fact that you have to climatize to a new hero pool every single stage. You are gonna do the first thing that you believe works. It's probably not even gonna look that good because you haven't had time to master it. And it's a fast turnaround time. Teams are gonna every single stage have to just do the first thing in their mind that feels good and starts to work, or I guess copy Dallas feel, which is what everyone did in June Joust. And you're gonna reach for the lowest hanging fruit, and you're not gonna reach a level of mastery ever. Yeah. I don't think we're ever going to reach a level of mastery like we saw in Season 2 with Goats with the Shock Titans thing, because you just are not going to have teams practicing the same meta for forever. And to go back to the Olympics analogy there, this would be like if you go to Olympics for dancing or whatever, but like the Olympics are spread into like 4 different stages, and each stage you're doing waltz here, and now you're doing the tango, and now you're doing jazz. It's just like what fucking dancing are we doing? You have to do a different style, and you have to do a different mastery every single time.
It's even worse. Like honestly, that's why I didn't really like for people who said like the Shanghai Dallas grand final felt like one of the best, if not the best final we ever had. Dude, to me it's like people
it was good though.
Get into a fencing match and then the one team wins by inventing the pistol. That's not satisfying, dude. Like it's just not.
Oh, it's good.
So yeah, I don't know.
You
won't get me onto that boat to ever liking that type of stuff. That's unfortunately the case. It's not the same.
Did you not like it, or do you disagree more with the fact that it was like somehow great? I would agree that it wasn't great.
Yeah,
but, like, I mean, it was good though. Like, it was a fun watch.
Even if you, that's the problem. I feel like people confuse parity with greatness, or like with great entertainment.
Sure,
and it just could not be further from the truth. Like
this is the ultimate entertainment versus like a display of skill kind of conversation.
Yeah,
basically, this is like. Do you want to see more entertaining games because it's more chaotic and teams don't know what they're doing because they have to adapt to new metas, and it's more fresh because there's new metas, and that's like quote unquote entertaining? Or do you want to just see the best Overwatch? Because it's either you get either the WWE or you can have sports.
Yeah,
nothing against the WWE. I mean, they got their fans, but this is the other thing. I've had this discussion before as well. I brought this topic up, but it's just like I think a lot of esports fans, especially in this game, care more about the entertainment factor. This is the whole Monte Cristo of watching not an anime thing again, is because a lot of people view this league through the lens of it being like wrestling, where like it's pre-scripted and there's protagonists and shit, and the protagonists win because that's how the script looks. And I would hope a lot of people that's like just a good meme and a decent troll, but there's some people that probably legitimately believe that. I'm like, dude, you guys, those people need help. You got
and if that's the way we want to go with it. then let's have a ball. Let's genuinely start to like have these crazy dramatic moments. Let's build this up. If that's the goal,
What do you want?
and that can
What
be
are you saying,
successful.
we
I think
more
that
WWE.
if that's the way the league wanted to go, I'd be fully supportive of it. I genuinely think it would
then
be.
I'm out, dude.
No, it's
Do
not.
call
It can't be.
after that.
It can't be. 100%. Like you have to wash your hands with that.
Anymore.
It's not. No, but it's incredibly entertaining.
I wouldn't. I don't know. It's not entertainment to me.
Fair.
Like seeing high level gameplay.
It is. You know, subjective. 100%.
This to me is what entertainment is.
Yeah.
Here is like you. It's be like if you'd rather watch Creed or a boxing movie than to see an actual boxing match. Is what this ends up being.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly that. I don't know. Like I feel like it's also just like the times we're in. I don't know if hardcore competition works at any level anymore. And in this game, where most of the people really can't see the game beyond like results on the scoreboard and results in the kill feed, it makes perfect sense that just narratives break loose based on that they're very shallow, right? Like,
oh yeah,
a lot of the audience and player base, if you think about it, though, and I guess this is somewhat true for most games, but the vast majority of the Overwatch player base is a quick play base. They don't play comp. They don't care about comp. But I mean, go to r/Overwatch and see how many. It's just like 99% quick play clips of Diva 4Ks that no one. I say no one cares about, but apparently they like that, even though it's the same clip day in day out. My point is if you look at games like. Bear with me, I'm going to talk about like Counter-Strike and Valorant and stuff like that. They have this massive hard-on erection for like top-level pro gamer, hardcore MLG 420 sniper kind of stuff where you have to be the best of the best, and they care about like full-on competition, and you're a scrub if you're like, screw you if you suck at this game and that kind of stuff. And there's a bit of elitism and toxicity behind that, which is the negative side. But on the positive side, they care highly about competition, the sports aspect of it, and they care highly about it being like, no, it's about competitive integrity. It's about the true competitive nature and the sports nature of it. We don't care no WWE here, no wrestling bullshit here. It's full 100% sports only.
Yeah, we reward people with attention if they are the best in the game, right? Like to a degree, like for instance, I don't think Tense is that entertaining of a person. Like, if he isn't the best player in the world, his stream isn't popping like this, right?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Same for, like, I think there's also a different, like, I think also there's a bias towards mechanics. That's why, like, people love Shroud and loved him during this playing career because it was very flashy and, like, they didn't understand the detail of what it actually takes to be, like, the best player in the world in Counter-Strike. But more so, like in this game, it's just not like we can't even agree with the best star at any given point.
Sure.
And then no, it's not about allowing. It's just like not having the audience there. It's just not.
It's about what people care about. I think like people in tactical shooters, for good reasons and bad reasons, and for a lot of good reasons, they care about skill level, which is why their top streamers and their top entertainers and their top personalities are typically the best players. Whereas, I'm not to sound accusatory here, I'm not saying this is bad, but if you look at the audience for Overwatch, they care about the entertaining people. They want to watch, the entertaining streamers who might not even be that good at the game. And people are going to bring up the popular streamers like Space, Space and Super, but even consider that Super's stream is a lot about his personality. I don't think people go to Super stream because he's the #1 main tank in the world, because I don't know that. I don't think he is, but he's got a super entertaining personality, and that's what people actually care about. So it's just it's a very different priority for the audience in terms of what they care about versus like a super competitive game. What I'm saying is I think our audience in Overwatch, the Overwatch core audience, doesn't really care about having a competitive game when the majority of players play quick play and don't care about being competitive at all. Like you play the game because, you want to write your fan fiction or whatever. And you want to.
But I don't see how that's too dissimilar, and I'll kind of just make a brief allusion. I know that I'd love to actually get into this because I think it's actually super interesting, but we have plenty of other topics to get to. My last quick rebuttal against the class. I don't think a lot of the points that we've made are too dissimilar to a lot of other games, namely League of Legends. I think this stems from a lack of identity from what Overwatch is actually supposed to be. Is this a shooter? Is this a MOBA? What are we? We don't know. The player base doesn't know. Exactly.
I think
we never have a comfortable footing, even going to the format. So nobody knows what's going on. So the only thing that they can latch onto is the entertainment factor. Wow, we played the funny hero. Haha, I play that sometimes. Like that's the surface level stuff we've gotten to, because everything before that has been so tumultuous.
Yeah. No, I think it's just everything now. Where this literally the zeitgeist where you cannot just be a music artist anymore.
See,
you either go super mythical about it and like let nobody really find out much about you, or you have to be like the full package, modeling, like media production, run your YouTube channel, run your vlog, basicly, and have the whole package. There's just not.
You have to be a full personality.
Yeah, it's not about delivering like the most honed like performance in the field you're actually competing in. It's pretty much in every part of life. It feels like this.
Sure, if you're chasing the best, I agree. If you're looking to be healthy, I disagree.
If you're looking from an entertainment POV, that's where I agree. But if you're looking from like a sports POV, like I don't think you'd look at a sportsman and be like, oh, this guy's personality's. I mean, maybe for sponsors, you prefer to have Messi and Ronaldo have good personalities, but ultimately they're there because they're the best. And we've got a different
generation, though. I think, like, okay, maybe I'm not making my argument clear. I think Zoomers care about this more than any other.
Of course, yeah.
Like, and us being a pretty new esport, I think Valorant majorly benefits from having so much crossover from CS because they are bringing their culture over. The players do, the talent that's there do, like, it is much more competitively focused, even though we're seeing already. I'm not even sure if I would really like sign that the most attention is given to the absolute best players. I think there's a bunch of shit talkers that are getting better viewership, for instance, but I think it's just like if you create a new esport and your audience is kind of younger, then this is now your reality. I'm not sure, like, that's the reason why boxing doesn't work anymore and we have to box YouTubers now. Like, everything is like this. Zoomers do not care for the essential competition. I think that's just my bitter mid-30s man take.
I'll see you in 5 years. We went on a pretty huge tangent. It's a good tangent, so I kind of let it run and we left it here. And it's speaks to a kind of wider, broader topic, which is pretty interesting. But it pretty much ends on, and as we have to start moving the conversation back to where we're supposed to be, to me, it's just the difference of, it started about talking about hero pools and what people want to see. Do you prefer to just have like chaotic stuff where it's a little bit more messy and fun versus like super hardcore refined stuff? And then we started talking about like, what does our player base even want and look at? And this is where, to sort of end the discussion, or like to wrap it up in a bow tie, at least for me, is we have games like CS and Valorant where they heavily idolize the high skilled players and everyone wants to be those players. And everyone idolizes the esports as well, and there's a high viewership for the esports because they want to see that high level competition. Versus Overwatch, where you have this almost incendiary view from the quick play portion, which is pretty much like the vast majority of Overwatch players, where they have a disdain for esports almost. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, they just like they this is a very anti esports crowd. Like, they're so uncompetitive and so anti-competitive that they have a huge disdain for esports, which is so 180 from other games that are esports and successful esports. And that kind of stuff affects your viewership as well, because people, why would people who play quick play want to watch an esport? They don't care about competition, they don't care about being the best. That's kind of what it comes down to. And who knows where things will be. But it's a hard question to answer, a hard topic to land on, depending on what side of the fence. And I don't envy the job of the league office to try and figure that out in terms of what the solution should be. Even though I think this season has done a much better job of it than at least last season. You definitely this is better than like week to week hero pools, or even bi-weekly, fortnightly hero pools. I mean, screw that. That was awful. But DP's hot take. This end of that conversation, nothing to do with DP's hot take anymore. But that's what we started on. And now we can finally.
It's a symptom
move
of
on
Deepe's
to-
hot take.
Yeah, it's just in terms of what people care about. But let's talk about some of the other teams here. So one of the teams that did beat the Gladiators was Paris, and Paris have ended up with a 3-1 result, and that's like their best ever result in terms of a stage. That solidifies them into regional knockouts. And we don't know. I mean, maybe this is the time to talk about what our expectations are for those regional knockouts in terms of where we expect Paris to be. But this is the real like Paris Renaissance. This is now Paris not quite reaching the form they were at last year because all their good players are in Dallas Fuel, but this is the highest level they've been since they've debuted this year.
That's kind of the impressive thing, when you look at like the shadow, the gigantic footprint that this team had to have filled, and they're actually starting to fill it out in like a really kind of pleasant way. Yes, that match versus the Shock was not the best, especially Hollywood. It seemed like they didn't really know what to do with their hands a lot of the time. I vaguely remember about a minute of them kind of switching on their attack on point A, just kind of floundering about what they were going to run. I thought their point B defensive comp was like really, really awkward. Didn't really kind of fit they didn't seem to kind of read the room in a way. Past that point though, you still see these glimpses of brilliance when you look at this team. When you look at Khan, I think Don is significantly leveled up. I think he's been playing lights out recently, and if that continues, I genuinely believe that Paris can be a threat. So much so that I predicted Paris versus the Shock. Like I wanted them to win. Like I predicted that. It didn't actually work, but I still think that has grown from that loss. I think this team is going to be a threat, and you can't.
I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think you predicting Paris was a hot take at all. I think that's a very reasonable take to have.
Hopefully, I'm the Highlander
warm
on top
take.
of the hill. Yeah, warm. Let's agree with
was
warm.
A hot take.
I think a lot of Shock 3-peat apologists may have words with me.
So all the Shock fans that wear rose tinted glasses, I got you. All right.
There we go. We're on call for them. But yeah, I think Paris is a threat. I think Paris can genuinely upset some teams.
So
depending on the bracket,
are they an upper mid-tier?
They already have.
Agreed.
Are they now an upper mid-tier / top team?
It's tough to say because we're going into a hero pool. It's difficult.
I mean,
to
first
quantify.
off, we're going into a knockout stage, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Depending on who else makes it, they're currently 3-1. You can kind of give them the lock. I think mathematically there might be ways that they tie and get out, but I can't comment.
They're locked into top 6.
Yeah,
we can confirm that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it depends on who else gets there. I would say that they're at least, overall standings, they probably already are top 6.
Paris are top 6. Let's assume that both Texan teams make it. I think that's a highly likely thing to happen.
Fair to say.
I would say that Reign making it is also highly likely here. I mean, what do Reign have left to go? London, yeah, it's a freebie. And Boston, which you assume Atlanta should be pretty favored there. So Atlanta, I think, is another safe bet to make it. So that's 4 teams. Mm-hmm. Gladiators have a good record here as well. What is their record? 1-1. Yeah, okay. Who do they play? Defiant and Washington. Unless they got to get upset by the Defiant, they still, I would say, at least go 2-2 here, which actually might not make it.
Mm-hmm.
We can land on 4 teams. Even if we just land on 4 teams,
sure.
I mean, based on that, and consider only 2 teams actually go to Hawaii, I still don't think Paris go to Hawaii, just because you have to get past some other very damn good teams.
Yes.
And Paris have been punching up. Don't get me wrong, they've been punching up hardcore, but they got to punch even higher up. Now you're talking about featherweights beating some heavyweights,
100%.
and that's going to be rough.
I mean,
is
it really done only Dallas, you mean? Heavyweights? Because they punch heavyweights, right?
I think you probably have to consider Houston right now. Granted, they have games left to play, but I don't see them struggling. I like where they're sitting with the meta. I think they're kind of stylistic in a way that they tend to lean with double shield. I think that might be a thorn in some team sides that they kind of have to adapt to. I don't think Paris is going to kind of fall prey to that. I think the big one is Atlanta for me. I think this is their meta, and I think you're seeing them really start to take off with it, especially in NA, right? I don't know how they do at Hawaii. That remains to be seen with the meta clash, right? But within their own bubble, I think they're probably, at least should be considered, one of the leaders with the meta at the moment. I think their sim TPs are on point. I think they're incredibly coordinated. I think Gator's playing lights out. This team, even if you want to throw a double shield at them, okay, cool, we'll play Kai. Go for it. You want to match that? Go for it. I don't think many teams can have answers to that. Houston maybe being one of them. Paris feels a little hit or miss. I have sung the praises of Onigod. I have sung the praises of Naga. I think they're great. But is that going to be enough for Kai or Happy? It's tough, right? I don't know that they go too deep. I don't know that they make Hawaii without like a gifted bracket.
They would require themselves to be on the opposite side of Fuel for one.
Yes,
and we are assuming Fuel are going to be good. By the way, either Houston or Reign could actually be the best team from NA in this meta.
Yeah.
But let's just assume they dodge whoever the best team is. And for the sake of historical recency bias, we'll just say Fuel for the sake of the argument here. Paris would have to dodge the field and be on the other side of the bracket.
Yep.
They're going to have to take down, I would say, one of Fuel, Outlaws, or Reign to make it to Hawaii. At minimum, I think they have to beat one of these teams.
And that's a tall task. That's tough. And that's no discredit to them. They're playing really, really well. But to kind of circle back to the discussion, like, are they a top team? Should they be considered like mid-pack? It's tough. It's tough right now. This is a hard one to judge.
Beat one of them is because there's no way you have Fuel, Outlaws, and Reign all on the same side of the bracket. And the reason I say that is because I have a heavy feeling that Fuel and Outlaws will be number 1 and number 2. I don't know in Watch Water. I don't know who's going to be number 1. Battle of Texas will decide that. But one of these teams will be number 1, and very likely the other team will be number 2. If it's not those two, then Reign will be number 2, right? So basically, if you number 1 and number 2 will be separated, which requires Eternal to go one way or the other. They have to beat one of these two teams in that number 1 and number 2 spot to make it to Hawaii.
Yeah,
and that
it's not impossible, but yeah, that would be some Cinderella-esque craziness that the summer definitely, wink, wink, nudge, nudge could provide. But you can't bet on that. That's not bettable.
Yes, unless you had something else to say about the Paris, I think we can move on to the Texan teams.
Yeah, I think it's the thing is with that narrative, right? Like a team that punches up, it's so hard to do that consistently. It's the same stuff that we said about NYXL when they somehow got to the Final Four, right? Like, you can do it one weekend. Chances of you being able to maintain that level and also have the others not figure you out are pretty slim if you aren't like legitimately like by the fabric of your team a top tier team. So I mean, is there a possibility? Yes, but like as it looks, they're going to be second seed, so you got to do it over 2 matches as well on different days, likely. Not high probability for me.
Just by the way, if you punch up enough. If you're consistently punching up, you're no longer punching up. Now you're just on that level.
Yeah,
so
you're just good.
That's the other thing as well. But moving on, we already started talking about the Texan team, so let's just head in there right away. I have both Dallas and Houston in very favorable positions. Looking at their matches coming up, Houston have Boston, should be a game that they can comfortably win. Dallas have Toronto, a game that they should be winning, and then they have each other between Dallas and Houston in their battle for Texas, which will be, I think, their 3rd or 4th, maybe their 4th battle for Texas this year.
Wow.
That's great. Yeah, because they've met each other so many times, especially in knockouts.
Because Dallas always upsets them, yeah. Well, not upsets, but...
Well, Houston actually won the first Battle for Texas this year, the very first one. Our first match.
In the regular season, and then they go to multiple play-in,
Yeah, so basically what I'm getting here is when you look at the records of both Houston and Dallas being at 2-0, we assume they beat the following respective teams in Boston and Toronto, which puts them at 3-0. Whoever wins Battle for Texas goes 4-0 and is first seed. And whoever loses that, I predict to be second seed. So are you guys along that same line of thinking as well?
Yeah. I would say that at least for me personally, I have Houston winning that pretty convincingly. And taking 4-0. The Battle for Texas, particularly. Okay. So I have them being 4-0 pretty convincingly. I'm not in love with
to go 4-0?
It's possible.
Oh,
4-0 and then you
just-
bomb out again?
Wait, is it the last match for both teams? Yeah, it is.
Well, no, Dallas plays one more.
Oh,
Dallas plays their Toronto game after they play Houston.
I guess.
So.
I guess they can win against Dallas and then throw against Defiance in order to have 3-1, right? The problem is, like, this time around, you might actually get first seed with 3-1. So that's something
Houston
to consider.
Have to beat Boston. If Houston have Boston first, then they play Dallas, and then Dallas also play Toronto after that.
Right. Yeah.
So Houston, if they beat Boston, beat Dallas, they're 4-0.
Right. But if they then lose against like the other, like, and theoretically speaking, like 3-1 could actually get you a bye this week, this time, right? Like, there's a lot of like teams
as a second seed. You mean as a second seed?
Second or first? Both of those teams could like, there's a possibility where, like, let's say Outlaws loses against the Uprising, and the Uprising loses against Atlanta. Atlanta has already lost, and then the Fuel
across the board.
Oh, so yeah, okay.
Right?
So what you're saying is first seed could be 3-1. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
That's possible.
Yeah.
But first seed and second seed are going to have buys here, and based on map differential, Paris are at +4, and I don't think that's a strong enough map differential to get you into first or second seed. So I think they're going to be somewhere between third and sixth, probably third and fifth. Actually, sixth seed will go to one of the teams stuck at 2-2, which San Francisco currently is, but their map record is not very good, so San Francisco are probably done for.
Yeah. As by the calculations from Eric, like, they already have no chance being the first seed, which makes some sense, right? Like, based on the
San Francisco.
Eternal. And Shock is basically out. They can sneak in at 6.
Much.
They're like 10%, I think.
Yeah, 10% for the Eternal to get second seed, which would be the 3-1 case, right? And then, but most likely like third or fourth, right? That's where they lie. They will have to play against the 5th and 6th seed, which looks to be like maybe Rain, maybe Uprising.
Glad Washington, one of those.
Yeah. So then you're, I mean, that one hurts probably. Like, that, you got to get past that. If you do, I mean, then you can buy the loss of like the bye week, right? Or the bye round. You might be able to upset. And by the way, this is a gigantic like problem logistically. I don't know how they're doing that. Like,
what if Paris makes it?
Yeah.
What problem?
Yeah.
Do you fly out
Paris
to
makes it to Hawaii. What do you do?
So apparently there is a contingency plan. There are like plans, like plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, etc.
Okay.
So this has been worked. And right now, by the way, I'm guaranteed. I'm certain the Overwatch League office behind the scenes, going through a lot in their minds. They're really working on the details with Paris, especially about like what the possibilities are, because there is a non-zero chance that Paris do make Hawaii, and they have to be prepared for that. And there's zero chance that the league office is just like, oh, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, and then the bridge comes, like, oops, we don't have a solution. There's a solution. I don't know what it is for.
Plan A currently is to DDoS Khan so they don't qualify.
Ignore the problem so we don't have to deal with it. Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah.
We'll DDoS you now. We'll give you
Rookie of the Year. They can't fly. So just to be clear, there's no way Eternal fly to Hawaii. You can't get visas. Visas is not going to. How are you supposed to get a visa? Can you
fly elsewhere?
COVID travel restrictions. Huh?
Can you fly elsewhere?
I don't
know. Because it's almost the same, like flying the other side of the planet, right? Like, or the other way around. So
all I can say is that, like, if you go all the way down the alphabet, Plan Z is basically they play on high ping. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no other option. You're on 200 ping. I know it sucks, but what do you do? That's Plan Z. Or I don't know how many plans there are, but you go down the list of the alphabet into whatever the last letter is for the plans contingencies, and that'll be that. Let's move through the rest of NA really, really briefly. I say the rest of NA. We're not going to talk about every single team in NA because I think like there's nothing to talk about in terms of Vancouver and stuff like that. With breadsticks, that meme is getting a bit boring now. But we need to get to APAC as well. We're about an hour in currently, so let's go over the Atlanta Justice kind of gladiators kind of areas. Well, I kind of want to just focus on teams that actually have a shot, maybe Uprising as well. These are the teams that I think have a good shot at maybe still sneaking in on a 3-1 or sneaking on a 2-2 tiebreaker. I foresee there being possibly 4 teams on 2-2, and one of those 2-2 teams will sneak in on the 6th seed, and there should be 4 teams on 3-1 and a single team on 4-0. It's kind of my pred.
Yep. Same here.
Yep.
Same here.
Yeah.
I don't know
So,
who that is.
Of those teams, what are you guys feeling? Because I think Fuel, Outlaws, Reign Eternal, those are locks.
Yeah.
2 more positions left. And to me, there are 3 viable teams for those last 2 positions. Glaz, Justice, Uprising.
Mhm.
I'm a
You guys agree
little.
with that, or?
Yeah, I would agree. I'm
you add Define? I don't
skeptical.
Nah, they gotta beat
I need to
Glass
see
and-
them
or
play this
Fuel.
rush stuff. It seems like that's kind of settling into like the meta. I don't know that you can afford to really play a lot of the dive. And I think that's why I'm a little hesitant with Dallas. And I think that's why I'm skeptical of Washington and Toronto. Washington,
By the way,
so out of sorts.
if Toronto can upset Glads or Dallas, they are 3-1. They make it in.
Yep, they make it in.
So as much as I can, so in my preds, I have them losing to Glads and Dallas, but
Mhm.
there's a non-zero chance
Yeah.
they actually win one versus one of those teams, and suddenly Toronto, off of one win, are going to be in the top 6.
I don't hate the Toronto Glads like upset. I think that stylistically, if you were going for an upset, they both have shown very similar styles. I think Glads has shown a little bit more breadth. I still kind of question, as much as Aspire's done really well for the team, like that can't be a long-term successful like option for this team. It certainly can't be, right? He's looked great. I think he deserves probably a look in the league. I'd be knocking on Vancouver's door post haste come, postseason, but I genuinely can't trust that team as far as I can throw them. However, stylistically, from what they've shown, they don't match up all that poorly. Like I think it's a lot closer than people would give it. To Depay's tweet.
You said knocking on Vancouver's door. I'm like, oh, what? Really?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them something.
Yeah.
They can't be bad forever.
I guess if you want to play and you're desperate, then sure. But yeah, that just left a weird taste in my mouth.
It is a bad taste, 100%. But we got to go somewhere with this team. And Aspire looks decent, so
man's
let's
got to
rebuild,
eat.
baby.
Man's got to eat
For real.
There is, so Washington to me have a freebie versus London. So to me, minimum Washington go 2-2 because they can either go 3-1 or 2-2. They beat London, so that's their 2. And then they either lose Glads and go 2-2 or beat Glads and go 3-1. So really, it's the Washington Glads game that counts. And that game, to me, also determines which of those 2 teams end 2-2 and potentially 3-1. Because if we assume Gladiators beat Toronto, Washington beats London, then in a similar kind of situation as we have for the Battle of Texas, the Washington Gladiators game has the highest impact because the winner is guaranteed into the top 6 and the loser has to go through 2-2 tiebreakers, which is not safe.
Yes, that is very much double lasering from the edge. It is not safe, my guy. I don't even know if Washington London is that much of a write-off, to be honest.
Really?
I mean, London's pretty bad, but
I'll hear on that.
Justice is. I have not been. I don't think Decay thrives on a lot of these decision-making heroes, or at least he doesn't feel comfortable on Sim. Mag feels really disjointed. It like letting in a lot of just damage, and I think their comms are kind of like wonky. There's a lot of instances where they TP and the team kind of splits down the middle. Where like
Let's
Mag.
define something, by the way.
Sure.
You are basically saying that London's first match win of the season is actually going to come from Washington, potentially.
It might.
Let's get that out there on the table.
It might.
In plain sight.
I wouldn't favor them, but I think it's a lot closer than I think people are giving it credit for.
I think London could take maps here. I think London could even do a shock style game where they go to 5 maps.
Yep. I don't think they win, but it's a non-zero chance for me that they actually beat the Justice.
I think Justice would have to boom. Justice would have the mental boom in this game. I actually think if they go to 5 maps, there's a chance that Justice get to map 5 and they boom. So I think it's very dangerous for Washington to go to map 5 here versus London. I think Washington got to close this one out 3-0, 3-1.
Yeah.
Agreed. They have to. If it goes the distance, I think London's on the mend. I think they're absolutely weightless when it comes to expectations. Like they're out the window at this point. Like I think they realize where they sit within the league. And I think they're adopting that underdog mentality. I think they felt really good after that Shock close call. Granted, they lost, but I think that builds a lot of confidence because Shock is, of that caliber, at least, maybe mentally or subconsciously for the players at this point.
It definitely has London ahead of Vancouver for me in power rankings.
Yeah, comfortably. But it's that Justice are a weird team right now. I think they have to do a lot. They have a lot of ground to cover if they want to compete, and if they want to actually make a stab for play-ins, because it doesn't feel comfortable for them at all as of right now. Yes, they did 3 of the Florida Mayhem. However, how much of a tell is that really? This is checkmate Florida Mayhem, right? You get to beat up on a team that who is running Orisa permanently throughout each map. It's kind of a gimme. God bless him. That was just interesting, Try to throw something at him, give him a different, throw a curveball. I get it, but that's not a good tell, right? That's not a good measurement of skill. And I do not think Justice thrives in this meta much like they didn't originally in the Melee, right? They want to play the dive stuff. They want to play Mag on Winston. The team doesn't look cohesive. I wouldn't point it towards anybody in particular. I think he's slightly underperforming. I think Decay's not necessarily performing on Sim all that well. It's not there, and I think they could be in danger.
Yiska, any thoughts on the interaction between Glads, Toronto, and Washington?
I think, I talked to Supreme in a pretty, a 25-minute long post-match interview. And I feel like they're feeling the pressure of the roster potential that they are. I think overall, they're slightly under where they want to be, right? Let's be honest, the difference between making one stage playoff or one times a Y and winning 1 or 2 more matches is currently what we consider to be the difference between an average and a good team or a great team, right? So they're not that far away from that, right? But no, at the same time,
in terms of the standings,
yeah, it's also you could argue that the meta wasn't really favorable for them over the season. You don't have that many Decay pop-off metas currently. And
what meta do you need? What meta they're looking for? You can play Tracer right now.
To the same, I mean, yes, and they found that out, and then immediately upon finding that out, they pretty much pounded, right? Or on the McCree or whatever.
Talk about this like it was a hard thing to find out. It's oh my god, we've discovered the Decay trace of never been seen before. What?
What they
the top of the list.
told me was they actually they had a I think 2-week break or something, and they practiced really hard for all kinds of different compositions, and they didn't have the same success apparently. It was an evidence-based decision what kind of comps they ran, and then in the match it didn't actually end up working out, and now you have to amend, right?
So scrims didn't translate to matches.
Yes, very much. They are scrim warriors apparently. Is what I could take from what
the team is saying.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean that might have different causes. I have no idea why that would be, right? But yeah, I don't know. But this team kind of needs a big win. I feel going to a Y could almost immediately shift the tone of their season.
100%. Right? Agreed. I mean, we still think of Florida as a decent team, and look at where they're sat. I mean, you look at a Hawaii appearance versus the standings, you're yeah, Florida's all right. Until you look at the standings, you're oh, they're not all right.
Yeah,
they're 10th.
It's unfortunately part of the small amount of games we are playing this season, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. That hurts. This is where this is where I think, man, I don't want to get into a massive discussion about this, and I've already submitted my feedback to the league about what I think. But we needed 5 matches per stage, not 4. Yeah. First of all, you dodge all these 2-2 tiebreakers, which feel awful. I don't like these 2-2 tiebreakers. They don't feel good at all. But you also then just have a little bit more breathing space to figure shit out. And right now it feels like you lose a couple of games. If you are down 2 games, you start your opening weekend 0-2, you're just done. You're gone.
Yeah,
there's no comeback.
So hard to come back.
look at Fusion. They nearly did it, but then they flubbed. So it's just so hard to come back from 0-2.
Yeah.
So I just think you need one more game in there minimum. So and
we're close to finding the balance.
And a length of the season as well. I'm gonna be greedy. I want to cast more games. So give me a slightly longer season too.
I will also say, like, I remember Pre posted like a thing that the upsets usually happen in week 1, and it makes perfect sense, right? The meta is not figured out as much as it and whatnot. I felt like what John Spector said in terms of like, this is a small sample size. I don't know if you want to open the door to that argument, because then I can legitimately say, well, your entire competition is devalued because we don't have a sample size to actually judge people on, and we like it's like. Like, it's what point do you think of like the games just like, you know how you have asparagus and then you put hollandaise over that? Like, it feels like at that point you're just using the competition as a vehicle for entertainment that the broadcast provides, much like you would eat asparagus as a vehicle for the hollandaise that you're rather eating, right? Like, it's just...
I can't afford hollandaise, so...
Yeah, I can't make it myself either. I'll burn it.
Really? Oh my god.
I mean, you don't get to talk, Mr. Spaghetti Apple Fritter Man.
I mean, yes, that was a while ago.
Good analogy. It's a good analogy. I just couldn't relate because I don't.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you got like many of the Americans didn't even know about white asparagus, so.
Yeah, we don't eat that tainted stuff here. Your corrupted white asparagus.
No,
we
but
have green asparagus. Thank you.
Like, I feel like it's a strategically bad move to just say, well, you know, in our sample size that really doesn't constitute a trend. When it's like, okay, that is everything then. Like, like because of a small sample size, the Florida Mayhem might actually be the best team in the Overwatch League. You know, like,
who's to say?
And I think that the argument that, for instance, Christopher had last season, where it's like, if we don't win the first opening 2 matches, we never go on a roll and win the regular season. I think that applies way more now. I don't know, like if a couple of matches go differently, I think that it interacts with the mentality of that team and possibly OG completely differently, and then you're rolling and you just keep it going, right?
100%.
So yeah,
you don't get a scapegoat with the formats though. Like, if it's too much, then you burn everybody out. But if it's too little, every match has way too much impact. You have to kind of find a happy median, and I think we're getting there. But we've just trended completely the opposite direction.
Yeah, and it's like, I will say, like, we looked at the format in the preseason, that they're like, other than like the first week bye, which felt pretty big, like it didn't on paper look like the system that was set up was okay-ish. But now, and there shouldn't be much blame on the league based on
no, of course not.
The technical aspects of it. But there's definitely like things that you can
room for
improve.
100%.
Improve for. Like, I think we don't have enough games anyway, and I think if you look at the amount of time, like the hours that a team like the Vancouver Titans or the London Spitfire get to actually show up on screen, can also not make their owners happy. Like, it's just like not enough. Like, you're playing, it's under an hour, under a day of play that you will have once the season concludes. Like, where your team
you only get 16 games. If you don't go to regional knockouts or Hawaii, you only get 16 games.
Yeah.
So if you're Dallas, you're super happy because you have so many opportunities to show your team. If you're anybody else, you're kind of sad. Let's move on a little bit here. I think we're basically done for NA. I think we can all pretty much agree that Atlanta look like a very strong team, expected to finish the rest of their stage 2 and 0. They got London and Boston. I think we can all agree Atlanta probably the better team here. Boston's the other team to kind of talk about. I have them going 0-2 because they have Houston and Atlanta. And I just think Houston and Atlanta are both way too good in this current meta, 2 of our strongest teams coming through from NA. And unfortunately, Boston, despite their 2-0 start, which included 3-0 versus Mayhem, the ending doesn't look good, and they're going to end up being one of the 2-2 teams. But their record is not going to give them a competitive enough edge to, I think, sneak into 6th place, even on 2-2.
Which is a shame, because I think that team has at least shown within week 1 of the Summer Showdown, I thought that they were like quick to the meta. I thought you saw them running around doing the sim TP stuff, really abusing people, especially on escort, which I thought was really interesting. That could be just a deficiency of, I think it was probably Florida, that they couldn't effectively burst down sim TP, so they were just like being on top of an Ashe and just like running on them, and getting a lot of value of just playing rush and like maps where you wouldn't normally kind of expect it. So they could be a dangerous team, but yeah, you can't bet against Houston and Atlanta right now.
Yeah,
it's a shame, but yeah.
So with that, I think we can close out NA and we can enter discussion on to APAC, and I think we can actually squeeze this into a really nice tight 2-hour episode. So obviously I casted all the APAC games over this past weekend. I definitely have a reasonable amount of thoughts. We'll start with the big fish, the big boy in the pond. Shanghai are just on another level. They have come off their Junjiao's victory, and they have not stepped off that throne. Not even, not a toe. 3-0 versus the next two best teams. It's not close. The level they're displaying in APAC is so not close that like they're in a skill tier and a complete league tier of their own. It's like at this stage you need contenders, Overwatch League, and then the Shanghai League. It's too far. It's too much. And they're, I would say, going to easily go 4-0 this stage. First seed, no issues. Straight to Hawaii. Give them the plane tickets. Well, I mean, they're not traveling, but give them the proverbial plane tickets, you know?
I think in particular, so I have thoughts about Philly. We'll get to them, but kind of diving into the Shanghai Seoul game, I kind of left Control feeling like I almost wish Gesture had played, to be completely honest. So for Seoul, I kind of wish that they would have returned to something that they played in May. That kind of like Sombra, Pharah, pokey stuff, having Gesture kind of roll around on the ball, giving them the option to still have their very strong Winston Tracer duo, because it doesn't feel like Marvel and Prophet are on the same page a lot of the time with the ball. Whereas with Gesture, I think maybe that synergy could pull them ahead, or at least make it a little bit more competitive, specifically on that game type. Outside of that, I really
do you have any
kind of out of sorts.
Shanghai, real quick, before we get into the Seoul?
Yeah, for Shanghai, I mean, they can run anything at this point, and they seem so dominant. I think Flip, if we're gonna call them that, the duo of Fleta and Lip. Yeah, I think they're the best DPS duo in the league, and it's not close. I think they're incredibly flexible. I think Flood is really coming into his own, making a stab for repeating MVP. Shame that he'll never get another skin for that, but you know, that's another story for another day. This team's nuts. They're coordinated to the nth degree. I think Izyaki's playing extremely well. Lee Jae-gon, God rest him, we'll avoid him at all costs. I think they're great. I think they're fantastic. It's 3-0, 3-0. There's not a ton to dive into.
I think this team is like got a best in slot player in every single position.
Yeah.
And yes, that includes Fate.
Pretty close.
Especially Fate on the ball. Like Fate's ball is sick nasty.
So much improved. So improved.
I just think this team can do no wrong. Shanghai, like you said, Flip is just not. By the way, anyone calling it Flipper, that's an awful name. Please don't. That's way worse. Just call it Flip. Come on, get with the program. Or any other derivative of like what is the other one, like
I don't know.
Letter, like no, that's awful. No, I don't. Letter is so hard to say. Just Flip is easy. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think we can all just we can Shanghai would be a pretty quick conversation here, guys. It's just like the number one team. If I was going to score them for, you know, just all the different, if there's like a FIFA card, you know, one of those things where it's like the technical ability in terms of mechanics and then teamwork and this and that and hero pool depth, it's just like it's almost just straight 99s across the board, you know, or pretty much. Yeah. It's high 90s, we'll say, across the board in terms of all the scores. I think they just have everything. They have no weaknesses almost.
Yeah, I think I would challenge you on Izzyaki. That's pretty much the only one that isn't. Ooh. I don't think he's a top 3 flex support.
Right. In the league, maybe not. Yeah, that's fair.
Everyone else, I think, on the team is.
I think Izyaki's okay. I don't know if you guys watch the broadcast, but I have this new metric that I go by for how I judge flex supports. It's called MPS, nutty plays per second. And Alarm is number 1 for me on nutty plays per second. He just does. What I mean by that, and that's the joke, is that I basically, when I watch Alarm, he does more crazy stuff more often like every single map that I see.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at some of the other people are gonna name, people want to say Fielder or Twilight or Violet, even though he doesn't play flex support anymore. He's a Lucio main. Or Yaki or this guy or that guy. But honestly, none of those flex supports compare to Alarm's just absolute consistency on nailing every single cooldown, every single shot, every single this and that. I just have never seen that. So to me, Alarm is untouched. But Izayaki at its peak has been pretty good. So when I say best in slot, I mean like I don't mean like every single player on Shanghai I consider to be the number one of the league in the respective role, but I consider them to be among a top enough echelon that there is not a weakness there. So maybe I should reword that because best in slot sounds like they have the number one player in every role. What I'm trying to say is I don't see a major weakness on any of their positions, to the point where like you could look at a certain what's a team that has a glaring hole in it. Florida's I know I don't want to say
Charge. I mean, they have a guy, and then they have built a hole around it. You know, like it's like in Minecraft when you stand on one block and the rest is just void. Yeah, that's.
Who are you talking about?
Charge.
Who are you talking about?
And Choice One.
Who on charge?
Choice One is the guy on the block.
Right. Yeah.
That's the weakness.
No, that's the only strength.
So everyone else is, I'm talking about a team where like all 5 players are really good and 1 player might be holding them back. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, the obvious one right now is probably Florida, but that feels like a gigantic gimme.
That is too low hanging of a fruit. I'm sorry, I can't give that to you. There's a team. It's hard for me to like. It's hard because I don't want to. I don't know. Could it be Seoul in the Marvel gesture position? Maybe that team. I don't know.
Yeah.
But even I don't know.
Chengdu in their random second DPS.
Chengdu's second yes, correct. Chengdu's second DPS position is a fucking black hole right now. So what I'm saying is there is no black hole of a position on Shanghai. We're like, yo, this one position on Shanghai really is just not up to scratch. Is what I'm arguing.
Yeah. No, that's true. I agree with that. Yeah. But if you wanted to upgrade, I think you would basically Shanghai with Alarm in there is unbeatable.
I mean,
okay, now you're playing fantasy Overwatch. You're literally playing fantasy Overwatch where you're like, yeah, let me just smorgasbord handpick the number 1 player in each respective position and put them on the same team.
Right.
Either you're building your FIFA Ultimate team here. Okay? And that's what you're playing.
Honestly, like, I think Shanghai is pretty damn close to having everyone in number 1. I think Tank's definitely covered. I think Lee Jae-gon, you can definitely argue. I think Lip is locked in. Not too sure about Fleta, but you could argue it.
Fleta really impressed me this last weekend. I think I was low on Fleta for a while. I was actually really low on Fleta. I was like, man, Fleta looks a bit washed this season. He's not at an MVP caliber. He's like got a wide hero pool, but nothing. He's got no peaks, you know. It's just this very flat wide hero pool where nothing stands out. But then he came back on a Tracer, did some crazy mechanics. I'm like, well, now Fleta's back.
Yeah,
to me.
Yeah. He didn't look like you would think like he would look worse against Prophet. Actually, no. Like he actually.
I think that's probably more for Seoul just kind of being out of sorts with what they want to run. But
let's get into Seoul because I think we're all agreed on Shanghai. So let's get into Seoul. Joe, you were talking about Seoul before I interrupted you, so you might as well finish.
Yeah, I do wonder if we'll start to see more gesture integration, specifically on control. I think it's a little harder on non-control maps just because you really can't argue like some of these. Maybe you could try to like mimic what Shanghai is doing on like 2CP with like the Fleta Pharah overhanging, point A, trying to like poke them as they come in, not giving them a bunch of dive targets because it feels like the standard meta in APAC right now, and AVRL, you can correct me if I'm wrong, feels more dive centric. It feels more ball centric. Somber Tracer ball really strong.
Only because Shanghai is winning so hard.
Okay.
Otherwise, Seoul and Philly were playing a lot of Brawl. But now that they've been gapped by Shanghai, and to be fair, everybody would have been gapped by Shanghai, it feels dive-centric because that seems to be what the winning team is playing.
Okay.
That makes sense? So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a bit of bias towards it because that's what Shanghai are doing. So it feels like whatever Shanghai do is the meta.
Agreed, and that was another point that I had for Shanghai looking at Hawaii. It feels like they're already a lock, so it kind of feels okay to talk about them like this. Their
Yeah,
2
they're locked,
CP
man.
comp, I mean, it has to be, right? Their 2 CP comp with Pharah is going to give NA a problem. Like this Pharah overhanging Hanamura, like just abusing people on rotations. You're not going to get, okay, you want to TP into Hanamura A's like little pagoda area. Cool. We'll just surround you and poke you like we do on Control. Like they have a good like style, but there's a lot of iterations to it that I think teams are going to have a problem with. And I think that is kind of the trend that we should be going towards.
Dallas with no pine. Pepe laugh.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part. I've been decrying Escort for a while now, but now it's looking like you kind of have to play that. And I don't think we're going to get at the Hawaii level, as weird as that sentence sounds. I don't think you're going to see like a Boston or a
Hawaii tier. I do love that, by the way. There's a Hawaii tier now.
I think it kind of fits, right? Like top 4, like world
Yeah.
Hawaii tier.
Contenders, Overwatch League, and Hawaii League, just they're in the tier of their own.
Shanghai's nuts. Seoul, I don't think I've never really been a big fan of like the double bubble or like the ball or the ball Zarya. It doesn't feel like Winston's are in a position to like really make that much ground with like an extra piece of resource. I get like
You mean Ball? You just said Winston.
I think both of them. I mean, Ball obviously operates in a different way. Winston in particular, just kind of like starting with that composition, like I don't see how teams are finding a ton of value even in practice with like a Winston getting so much space created just with a Zarya bubble. The Zarya doesn't ever feel like she's actually doing anything because everybody just like backs up either way, or they just don't have like targets for you to actually dive onto. The Ball still feels a little awkward. I think Seoul started to find their footing, especially against Charge, once they swapped more towards Ashe instead of McCree. I wasn't. I thought Fitz kind of had a pretty poor game. Underperforming.
Yeah, that was not good.
He was just playing so deep in the pocket, rotating really, really late. His flashbangs just weren't there to like stop Choi at all. And that's again to kind of circle back to what DePay was saying. I thought Charge actually played extremely well, especially on Junkertown, kind of like shaking up where Kriv was playing, how they were using Choi, giving him the comfort pick of Genji, like you've been kind of praising him or, kind of hopefully, seeing out of him for a while.
Praising, meaning.
Sure, but
I've
you
gotten to the point
look,
where I can perfectly call when Choi is going to go Genji. There was a moment on Hollywood where he goes back to spawn, I'm like, Genji? And just straight away Genji. I'm like, there it is. I know you.
It makes a little bit of sense. I don't know if it's the best pick ever, but if you put it in his hands, you give them, an interesting identity. I don't hate it.
I'm not going to get too deep into Charge yet. Maybe we can talk about Charge after Soul. We've got Philly and Charge to talk about here. But Soul, to me, man, I'm disappointed because I spent last week hyping up Soul. I get it. Warlock strikes again. I said that Prophet was now going to be the best Tracer with Striker gone. And then he got shat on by Flitter. I'm like, well, there goes that theory. To be fair, Lip had a big part to deal with that. Lip really bullied the hell out of Prophet to the point where on cast, and this pained the fuck out of me to say on cast because I also remember I said Prophet was going to be the best Tracer, and then on the cast I said Lip is currently playing a better Tracer as a Sombra on this map than Prophet is on a Tracer currently. Right. It's just, and he was. Lip was out damaging Flitter, Prophet, and Fitz on a Sombra, and I think all three of them were not playing a Sombra. I think Fitz was on a McCree or an Ashe. You had two Tracers, and then you have Lip Sombra. And Lip Sombra, and Sombra is you guys know, this is a passive hero that doesn't do a shitload of damage. He was heavily out damaging all three other DPS, including Flitter, who was popping off. That is how good Lip is in this Flip duo.
Right. Yeah.
That on a hero that traditionally does not do a ton of damage is heavily out damaging everybody. I could not believe that.
Can I nitpick for a second about this kid? Because it feels like we can sing his praises all day, but I'm still not trusting him with that Q button. I think he's been better.
It's been much better. No. He only had one limp EMP that hit 0. He only hit one.
Okay, fair. That's fair.
And they still won the fight with a limp EMP, which just goes to show how good the team is.
They don't need him. They don't need it.
They don't.
But there's still room to improve, which sucks. I don't want to nitpick with that, but
I think we can all agree on one thing. What?
You know, last season when someone said that Lip's EMPs were a liability, you know what happened to that guy? It was
what?
Like, Dream said that, right? Like after VOD review, where
And now he's successful in Valorant.
No, no.
What do you want me to say?
My point is, like, he went 3 hours through a VOD. The conclusion was Lip's EMPs aren't great at that point in the season, and then the narrative became the Outlaws coach dream of whose team is currently losing because of him, because he thinks Lip is trashed here and should not be in Overwatch League. That was basically the reading from that.
Sure, yes. I think that it's unfair to say that somebody's bad at a hero because they're, you know, I wouldn't draw that same conclusion. I think he's been a fantastic Sombra, but his EMP decision making, big sus.
Joe's not saying Lip's a liability on Sombra. Joe's just saying Lip can still improve, which is an accurate thing to say because every player could improve. Every single player in the league.
That's just one area it feels like needs a lot of improvement.
I just want to say I think we can all agree that though Lip has the best neutral Sombra in the league. Do you guys? Because the only other contender is Doha, but I think Lip outstrips Doha right now. I've been just even looking at stats, just
like the seamless transition from him playing more utility based to just like actually farming, like you guys showed on broadcast, putting up numbers that are like how. Like, that's the stuff that ruins my solo queue games, where people are like, well, Lip can do it. I want to put up 4K and 40K numbers.
Like, on a Sombra than a Tracer. What the fuck? That should not be possible.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
Not be possible.
It's nuts. It's insane. Like, he's extremely good in the neutral. I think he does a good changeup where he's, like, marking the enemy Tracer, going for translocator displacement, going for hacks on targets. Like, he can do it all. And he kind of can do no wrong with it.
He actually I debunked that entire narrative about bad EMPs aside from the one limp EMP because his end of match stat was 22 overall targets hit with EMPs.
Yeah,
over 3 maps, which is a lot. That's a huge number.
You can hit a lot of targets, but how many of it's been better.
Twice as many ultimates as everyone else, right? Like,
yes, he does. He does ramp into them extremely fast, and a lot of them, for the most part, with the limp EMPs, feel like a lot of buyback, where like they're down in a fight, he uses the EMP to try to buy them some space back into the fight. It tends to happen on control, it feels like, but that's completely unfounded, just a feeling. And that's where it's like you're getting a lot of targets, but you're not necessarily winning the fight with it. Like you're hitting blankets.
I didn't see that many buyback.
No, not in that match. Not in that match, not at all. But just historically speaking.
Yeah, I think there was like one moment where I'm like, well, he shouldn't have used it there, but otherwise no. And yeah, I think on the first map of Busan, he had an average EMP time confirmed by stats of 55 seconds. So under a minute. He was getting EMP under a minute on average. It's ridiculous, right? So yeah, he gets twice as many EMPs. He was lapping EQO in Philadelphia's game. And fans, EQO is your best Sombra in Philadelphia, you're in trouble. Because Lip was literally lapping him on EMPs. It was not funny. It
was getting picked extremely fast, but that regardless of the point, like you can't.
And this entire tangent came up because we were talking about Lip just diffing Seoul, but Seoul, I think for me, it's an end where I started. Disappointed with where Prophet and Fitz were, and Fitz was my, mid-season was my most improved player, and now I feel like in this Shanghai game and even in the Guangzhou game, like he's just slid back down.
No good deed goes unpunished. That's unfortunately. Huh? No good deed goes unpunished. Like you praise him 1 week and then
you can have a bad week.
I know, but I hyped up the Shanghai versus Seoul matchup every single time, and I hype up the Lip versus Fitz matchup specifically as well, more than the Prophet versus Flitter one, by the way. Right. Even though those are the two MVP players, because to me, at the time at least, Lip and Fitz were the two best up and coming hit scans. I say up and coming in the sense where like I think they're on their way to being the top. But now the narrative's just changed. Now the narrative for me is Lip is just the top. He is just the number one, and Fitz is the guy that's like somewhere between up and coming and then being consistent. And I don't know where he is now, and he gets hard diffed by Lip every single time. I've confirmed that in stats as well. It's just he can't compete. Fitz is, for how good Fitz has been, Lip is on another level this year. And the Lip is, I'll be honest, dude. Unfortunately, does MVP come down to a popularity vote? I think Fearless will get the end of season MVP just down to popularity, but I think Lip really deserves a good look.
He continues, yeah.
I think Lip just won't win because it ends up being a popularity contest. But
Fearless is just anime protagonist number 5 this season, and for rightfully so. His story is fantastic, but Yeah, I mean, this kid's putting up numbers. Like, I think a lot of last point for me on Lip. I think a lot of the DPS discussion tends to revolve around like what roles are asked to play versus what hero or what players actually can play. And I can't for the life of me find somebody who consistent enough and who also plays Lip's hero pool. Find me somebody who has a world-class Sombra who also can play Hitscan.
Well, no one has a world. The problem, you can just stop at the world-class Sombra.
Sure.
You just stop it there.
I mean, you say world-class Sombra, you're like, okay, well, what about Doha? Like, he's been historically pretty good. Okay, cool. Like, you don't have a Hitscan, though.
No Hitscans.
Yeah, zero.
Doha's got an interesting hero because he's got Sombra plus...
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
Yes. Hisu has Hitscan plus Sombra.
That's fair. That's a good challenge.
So that's close. Yeah. I will say the one area that Lip suffers in is I don't think his Widowmaker's potentially top tier, but that's just us. If this guy had a top tier Widow, that's just too much. It's like, you can't be this good.
That's a unicorn.
You cannot be this good. Like, there has to be some, level of mortality here. When, like, right? There has to be some level where I realize this guy is just not an actual god. But yeah, enough praises sung. We'll clean up Seoul, move on to Guangzhou and Philly really quickly before we end the show. So I think it was even casting that Seoul versus Guangzhou Charge game as we start hitting, maybe transitioning the conversation to Guangzhou just a little bit. Guangzhou, where, and I said this multiple times in broadcast, mega slow team, super passive, and Seoul were not able to capitalize in the first two maps. It took Seoul a long time to kind of wake up, and Prophet especially, it took until that third map for him to really get stuff done on the Tracer. Soul just had a awkward, awful weekend, and I honestly, I think they should bring Gesture back a little bit. So I agree, they maybe need to look at Gesture on Winston and Ball again, and maybe have Marvel as their Ryan play. I don't know what the solution is, but
it's such a big change-up too.
Completely benching Gesture, I think, is a response to them finding success with that decision versus Chengdu and Hangzhou Spark, especially versus Hangzhou Spark, where they got that nice 3-0. And that 3-0 is, by the way, what baited everyone to believe that Seoul were going to be a good team again, because they're like, oh my god, they beat Hangzhou Spark. Hangzhou were like a 4-0 team from June Joust. That means Seoul's a top tier team. And while I still think Seoul are like top 3 in APAC, they baited everyone to believing they were going to be so good, and they got humiliated by Shanghai, and then nearly humiliated by Guangzhou Charge in a 3-0 as well.
Yep.
Yeah. I think, I would agree 100% with Charge being extremely slow, and I think they started off that way. You look at their control, I think I counted, here, let me actually pull up my notes. I think it's like literally the first 3 jumps that Rio has on City Center is like jumping to try to pressure out a flanker near the lift, and then jumping for cover towards mid, and then jumping in to actually engage. Like, that's a good minute and a half gone.
Yeah.
But then he will kill Animo and Creative.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's just getting to that point, and then Soul just never answers. They're just like, cool, we'll just catch it, I guess, and then they just fail.
Which is also where they started to fail in the last 3 months. How they got reverse swept is Seoul were no longer just instantly feeding their supports to Rio.
Mm-hmm.
That changed. So the one massive win condition Guangzhou Charge had, that was out now. They don't have that. I heard some, was it like, it might have been comms. I think it was comms check. And Guangzhou Charge in the comms check was saying stuff like, guys, we just need to focus on a plan and commit to it. And I'm like, that just tells me everything about what's going on this team. Now I know why they're so slow. Is there like a comms issue where they're not like able to formulate plans correctly? They don't have a centralized calling structure where people are making plans. It's like the opposite of Shanghai Dragons. Shanghai Dragons are fast. When you look at Shanghai Dragons play the game, every single movement, every single decision leads to an outcome that progresses the objective in some way. And when I say progress the objective, I don't mean they're pushing the payload. I mean like
their goals.
Position where they can get towards capturing the payload or towards capturing point. They're moving towards a position that gets them the objective. Whereas Guangzhou Charge, I find more often than not, they're literally doing fuck all.
Yeah. And I think that stems from the coaching lack. I think the calling structure is probably getting figured out. I'll give them credit in this Seoul game where they're still kind of running just like very direct compositions. It's like, okay, we're going to play Lucio, Moira, or Reaper. We know exactly what we want to do. All we have to do is do it. Still kind of playing a little slow. They pick up the pace, right?
Because that's a very active, fast comp for very slow.
For a slow team.
Hilarious.
I think that's intelligent for this team in particular. Let's be very clear. For a team that is struggling with like trying to be a pit crew, right? You can't be Shanghai right now. Like you cannot have all these fast moving parts, you know, have all these weird tempo looks, have all these weird compositions. You need a direct comp that is going to get you in and get you out and have very fast fights if that's the way you want to play, right? You need like a very colored composition. You either are going to play really slow and play very like blue. Shout out to all the MTG nerds, right? Or you're going to play red deck wins and you're going in, right? You're just, you know, dropping monsters and white weanieing your way to victory, right? They're at least playing into that, right? They're at least playing Lucio Moya. They're running in. They're playing the Genji. They're running in, and he looks great on a Choi, that is. They're finding some footing there, and it sucks that we didn't get to see that kind of progress into a you know, eventual maybe game 5 come next season, hopefully. But I think they're starting to find the right way. But let's see what happens with the hero pools before we give them like all the credit in the world.
I want to get Yiska's take on this right after this as well, but I find that Charge devolve into a Choi Se-hwan go carry team very quickly. Like they're once they run out of ideas, and that happens very quickly, by the way, it just becomes, well, I guess we play Genji and we play for the Nano Blade. You know how Seoul end up countering that is just like, we know they're playing for the Nano Blade. We're going to start, you know, alting more. Philadelphia did a beautiful job of this, by the way. I think Philadelphia did overcommit some ults sometimes, but they knew how threatening the Nano Blade was, but they were willing to smash in a lot of resources just to counter the Nano Blade, because they knew even if we overcommit to countering the Nano Blade,
that's their only win condition.
Nothing else. All you have to do, even if it's expensive for us to counter the Nano Blade, as long as we counter the Nano Blade, there's literally no other win condition for Charge.
They can't play the neutral.
Yep.
You have an 80% win rate in the neutral, and then you shut down their one win condition. That's a game 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if there's any quick recourse or like way to turn it around for this team, because
they have a good team. They just need like a restructure and a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I've
season to try again.
I felt for a long time that the backline is holding this team hostage for the most part.
Yeah, Mondu is, God bless him, Jesus.
I also think. Sorry.
You need to interview Sung Woo. He speaks a bit of English as well, I think.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it's really hard to also find, like, they almost, because they're captainless, and to the same degree Spark is as well. I think that's just like the theme of their season, that that these teams just don't have a coherent direction, and that both manifests in like who's coaching these teams. And in the strategy.
Cooks.
Sorry, they really don't.
They have no cooks in the kitchen, as opposed to too many cooks.
Too many.
Yeah.
No one's cooking.
So
I can't even think, like, who would you want, right? Like, I can't. I think it's probably tough. Well, I mean, that's kind of speculating. I don't know who you'd want to insert into this team that feels like the right fit. Like, who's like a strong leader? Yeah, into Charge.
Animo is I don't know who a strong leader is. I don't know who strong leaders typically are in teams. I don't know unless I've been told by somebody in a team.
I mean, you need coaches first, right? Like,
yeah, 100%. That goes without saying.
I don't know.
100%.
I think this season's just a wash for them. You know, like
yeah, it's so much ground to cover.
I don't think they changed the roster this season. I think it's too late. It's too late to pick up people and drop people now. I think Mike Kelly spends probably the rest of the season on the bench, or unless they're feeling very kind and to give them some games if they know it's just over anyway. Yeah. I'm a little bit sad about Ji-hun on the bench, and maybe I overrate Ji-hun, but I think Ball could be good for this team. I think Shanghai have proven that Ball is very effective, and you have a Ball specialist in a team that you just don't run.
Yeah. That's fair.
Like, copy Shanghai, like, fuck's sake. Like, I'm not saying like that's not the answer, but it's a possible solution. And by the way, and I don't want to get too deep back into Shanghai, but Shanghai to me are like the better Chengdu right now, because they're running a Chengdu style where they can be very active around the map, play very fast heroes, have a really good ball player, and do ball-based maneuvers and executions that really give your DPS the time to shine and the position to shine, which is how Leave gets a lot of value as well, playing off of Gaga. The difference is, like, every single player individually on Shanghai, except for maybe versus Leave is like just better than the players on Chengdu. And to be honest with you, Flitter Lip is probably, I would argue that Leave and Flitter are on a very similar level right now, but you know, everybody else on Shanghai just outclasses Chengdu, sadly, for Chengdu. Yep. So maybe Fate doesn't completely outclass Gaga on the ball. I will still hold that Gaga traditionally has had the best ball I've ever seen. But right now, Fate's peaking hard on the ball. Basically, my point is exploring some of these other teams as well. Like, that's part of why I think Shanghai's doing so well, because they've mastered the Chengdu style to the point where it's not just this mean ball comp. It's just like, holy crap, it's working exceptionally well. And that got proven to me pretty hard in the Philadelphia game, where Li Jiangtao was a close affair from Philadelphia. There was that like 1 to 2 minute, 1 minute and a half fight that went on forever. When we started to get into the Jungle Towns and especially on Volskaya, man, Shanghai diffed Philadelphia really hard on multiple positions. And Philadelphia, to me, right now, I think their weakness is potentially their DPS line, because I said this on broadcast, but I don't think they have an elite tier tracer on their team. I don't think they have an elite Sombra either. I think Philadelphia's strength has been in playing brawl compositions, having Carpe on the McCrees and the Ashes. I think and we'll see what Shockwave does, because Shockwave, by the way, is eligible now because he's out of quarantine. But still, Shockwave, EQ, and Rascal, to me, are 3 players that have way too similar hero pools.
I think that Shockwave's kind of a bait at this point. I think that their best bet moving forward is to probably lean extremely heavily into this brawl stuff, allow Rascal to kind of like find comfort with the Mei. They look very good on the brawl. I think you can put away both Chengdu and New York doing that, and then you go into hopefully Hawaii. Granted, you have to make it through planes as well, but I think if you're that stylized, I think you can kind of like beat a lot of these teams to make it. And then you're basically playing the NA meta versus NA teams, and you try to just squeak in a win to get some points. I don't know that anybody is going to beat Shanghai as it stands right now. I don't think NA's meta is right. We'll have to see what Hawaii looks like, but I don't think this is like another Dallas like cultural victory where you come over and you bring your meta and you force the enemy to play that. Like, I don't think that's the case. I think Shanghai's probably too far ahead.
You need to respond to ball somehow, and I don't see how a team like Dallas does that. You're gonna put Fearless back on ball. Dallas needs a meta where Fearless can play Winston, and you don't need an elite tracing. You don't need a hit scan. That's too much on the checklist for Dallas. And I've now become a bit of a Dallas apologist because I have them going 4-0 and all this crap. Change that. But I mean, Jesus Christ! Like, for all the NA team, all the NA fans that just default who don't watch APAC and just look at the rhetoric and the narrative of Reddit and be like, oh yeah, everyone's saying APAC is weak, so APAC must be weak. You have to understand how do you defeat this ball? How do you defeat Shanghai's ball composition right now? If Dallas match it, you're gonna lose. Dallas simply cannot just play what Shanghai are playing, because Fearless is. I'm gonna say it. Fearless is gonna get diffed by Fate on the ball.
Yeah, just like June. You get June all over.
Yep, it already has happened. It will happen again. So I don't know. NA are in trouble if they can't counter Fate. It's weird for me to say this, but Fate is like almost a linchpin on this team, on this ball, and what he enables Shanghai to be able to do. Like, he is the door that opens. He opens the door for Flitter and Lip to completely destroy your team. But without Fate's ball, that door is not open.
100% agreed. And I think the trap is this like Mei Sombra stuff that I'm like, bro, I get the engine's really strong. I love EMPing into a Blizzard, into a Shatter, into building everything, right? It feels almost like goats. But your neutral fight, your damage potential.
Yeah.
You got pillow hands, son. Come on. You can't tell me that that's something you feel comfortable walking into a fight with, playing extremely slow, letting somebody take first control of whatever objective you're playing on, and just opting to build ults. Like, you're handshaking the first fight because you don't have what the comp is built around. You want the EMPs. You want that to build into the Blizzard. You want that Blizzard to build more of your EMP, more of your Shatter, more of your window, right? To kind of start that snowball along that you can just start wallet diffing kids. But you need time to get that. And I think that's the big bait. I think that's the bait to trying to beat Shanghai is, okay, we'll play the Sombra to hack the ball so he doesn't get a ton of value. Okay, great. You still have to deal with Flip. And you're playing Mei Sombra. Go for it. Have fun with that.
Okay.
It's a conundrum. It's a weird style to beat, but that's not it.
Philadelphia can't play Shanghai style at all.
No, and I think you just have to give it up. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to just commit to saying they have to find success, but the fact that they can't at all, they can't even entertain the thought. Because who is on this team as their Tracer player?
Yeah.
All 3 Tracer players they put up against Shanghai all flopped.
Yeah.
Carpe flopped the hardest out of all of them. Carpe got mega diffed by Flitter. I can't believe I'm saying that, but mega diff was a thing.
I'm like, Fleta or was it Lip? I felt like it was Lip just like smothering him.
Well, it's a bit of both.
Fair, I'll take that.
But I mean, look, if your best, but like EQO wasn't super helpful in the Sombra.
Not at all.
The problem is like everyone's getting deffed.
Yeah.
Like, like the only player, surprisingly, that maybe not surprisingly, the one player, and Alarm always does well, so he gets my default vote of confidence. But the other one other player that did really well despite the circumstances, actually Hopper.
Yeah.
But this is the best that Philly can do to even attempt to play a dive is to do the Mono Winston, Hopper Diva, and some Alarm Anna, which is his best hero anyway, and then just go from there and just see what you can make work with that. But the DPSs will hold you back because they need a Genji meta. Look, if this was a Genji meta, yeah, sure, put EQ on the Genji. You're gonna if it's an Echo meta, yeah, put EQ or Shockwave on that. You're gonna be brilliant as well. But you don't have. I just don't think they have the elite Tracer to really complement the rest of their lineup to make dive work for this team, which is why they've been a great brawl team, but I think just a maybe above average dive team.
Agreed. And I don't think like Echo is the answer for a lot of people. I think Tracer just kind of like gets so much inherently out of her where like you double blink in and you immediately have to leap. Like you have to fly right off of the 2 blinks and then you recall, and it's not even a handshake at that point. Like it's such a high value ability for Echo. Yeah, 100%.
You know why Echo doesn't get game time, especially versus Shanghai's comp? Who does Echo shoot? You can't shoot Tracer. You can't shoot Sombra. You can't shoot Ball. You shoot Diva. That's your primary target is Diva now. Congrats.
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
You're on clockwork duty, okay? You are a Diva buster.
Has nobody to shoot versus what Shanghai plays. This is why Echo can't get played.
The one out for Philly, I think, like I said, is to like double down into this rush. Lean into it. I don't think Shockwave's the play. Save him for Countdown Cup. I think it's a bait if you try to integrate him into the practice, into like a Sombra or Tracer, even though I think he probably could be good.
I think
they just don't have the time.
Yeah, I think Sombra might be.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough to say what he does better. I'm willing to give him a chance.
The answer could be everything, and I will accept the answer being Shockwave is better than EQ Rascal. That's an acceptable answer.
Sure.
But then you just replace the same player with another player with the same hero pool, and maybe as a better player. But I don't think that fixes the fundamental problem for Philadelphia. You've just gone sideways.
Save it. Save it for Countdown. Go into the rush and play. I think they could try to do like the double shield bunker stuff on maps like Hollywood and maybe Junk. Try to abuse teams like Dallas who like it just will not answer you. Teams like Atlanta who can answer you, but it depends on if Kai's playing or not. Maybe try to like leverage the fact that you have some sort of hit scan presence and another the enemy team doesn't have, or you try to drag them into your style. But I think the answer for Philly is to play the rush. Go to NA, play NA style, try to beat them at it. I think it's going to be a little difficult, but I think they're a coordinated enough team with the right pieces. I think you give Rascal as May. I think he's fantastic. I got obviously Alarm's playing lights out. Astro looks great. Yeah, I think that's the out for them. They have to lean into rush. I don't think the dive's going to work.
We're going to end APAC into the podcast in a short while, but who joined Shanghai and Hawaii out of the rest of APAC?
I think it's Philly. I think they feel clear to me, unless like Spark shows me something good. Yeah, I think really? It's Philly. I don't trust Seoul. I do not trust them. Nope, not one bit. I think that if they were to answer Philly's rush, I'm not confident. I don't know. That's tough.
I think it's whoever Fusion or Seoul who gets to dodge Shanghai, right?
No,
they both do.
Agreed.
Well, they both do. The fourth team is going to be Hangzhou or Chengdu. I'm nearly certain.
And that's who plays Shanghai, right? It's 1-4 and then 2-3.
one of Hangzhou or Chengdu will play Shanghai. So both Seoul. So basically, my question is Seoul or Philadelphia, because they will play each other.
No, I trust Philly. I
So
do not trust Seoul.
I guarantee you they play each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put money on it.
Same.
So I don't know who I trust actually, because I've seen Seoul's highs. And
Agreed.
I think Seoul at their peak profits is a better DPS duo than the 4 DPSs that you have. For one, I think the tank line is by far stronger on Philly. Given that, Flex support's better as well. I think let's just be clear: the tank line and the support line of Philly are better. But I think profits at their peak is better than the 4 DPSs on Philly. That's really all I got going for Seoul.
Yeah.
But if you drag them into a meta or like a meta pocket for this match in particular, where you limit their individual capability, right? You put them on like a Mei, you put them on like a Symmetra, where like you can't necessarily shine. Soul, that is, right? If you drag profits into something that isn't individually impactful,
Jesus Christ,
it's tough, right?
Oh, that's an auto. That's going to be a Philadelphia win.
And I think that's where at least some of the maps go.
Seoul did find some decent progress on Brawl early on.
Agreed. Yep.
And I think they're going to get baited into playing Brawl versus Philly, which is exactly what Philly want.
Mm-hmm. That's
right
what's scary.
Right in the clutches, right in the jaws. Oh God, Seoul are going to get chomped.
It's if Philly actually plays it though. To be fair.
Fun fact, by the way, between Philly and Seoul, this will be the first time one of these two teams make it to Hawaii. First time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because both teams have missed out time and time again. And it's usually, you know why they missed out?
Because they play Shanghai.
Shanghai team always eliminates them.
I will say, I think I would like for Fusion to get a break. I think it's better for the team, for Countdown Cup, and for integration into season playoffs, that this team gets a break and really integrates the players and really finds out. Like, they gotta build an identity. Like, Tracer is going to be around in season playoffs. That's just going to be a thing. You gotta find your Tracer guy. And you gotta sit him down and have him grind Tracer in ranked end scrims, like pretty much 24/7. And if you're under the strain of competition, especially as little games as you have this season, you gotta, like, yes, like their early season success sort of gives them a little bit of leeway to play around with. In order to not threaten playoff qualification. But, like, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they didn't make it this time and actually really got to use the time of, like, you know, getting Astro, even though I think he's much more plug and play than the rest. Possibly, I'm not sure what the Poco situation is. I also don't think it's majorly required with the way Hotbar has been playing. But, yeah, I think if you want to figure out that DPS situation, which you absolutely have to, it's super weird that we're talking about a Philadelphia Fusion where the weakest role is DPS. That was never true in the history of that team.
Oh yeah, it's always been kind of a. I think it's kind of been a bait, but I think it was kind of
Isu and Ivy. They covered way more, I think, with those two players.
Yeah. Isu got a lot out of Sombra, and then Ivy obviously was like the Tracer go-to, who obviously was a little hit or miss, but still like way better than what we've seen thus far.
Realistically, like, if I have someone like Carpe, he has like one of the, like, he has a long season contract, he has a high-paying season contract, he has shown to be
one.
Like, my dude, you are the guy that needs to step up on Tracer. We got the rest figured out.
I don't think so.
No.
I think it's the other three.
I think it's Shockwave.
EQO have to.
Yeah.
I think it's Shockwave as well. I think it's either EQO or Shockwave. I don't think Rascal's got it within him, unfortunately.
No.
One of Shockwave EQO could do it. And they have the perfect hero. I explained this last episode, I think, where I think your flex DPS needs to be your Tracer player, because right now that's the current standard. Like the Flitter position, the Prophet position, that's your Tracer guy. That's why Sparkle's on Tracer. Well, also because, you know, Doha and Sparkle play the same hero pool, so I guess that's a redundant comment to make. But yeah, And to be fair, even with Pine in the roster, I still think Spark was the Tracer guy because that's the correct position currently to have your Tracer. As fun as it was watching Lip on Tracer, it is technically more correct to have Flitter on Tracer than Lip on Tracer based on where the evolution of the DPS roles has gone in 2021.
Yeah,
agreed.
Fair point, yeah.
But is it, I mean, it kind of circles back, is like, do you integrate Shockwave now? Is that a bait? I don't know. Like, that's a lot of ground to cover.
What's the better What's the better alternative?
I mean, I think it's just to play Rush. I think you have to just double down, play Rush. The last two games are lightweight. It's Chengdu and New York. I think Chengdu could be a little dicey, but I think New York's a wash. Then you go into play-ins. You have to beat Seoul, who I think you can drag them down.
Guys,
you play NA style. I think they can score points.
I think there's a non-zero chance Chengdu upset. I think. Oh God!
Yeah, no,
I don't. The Chengdu mage. I'm shut up now, guys. Wizard here. No, I'm serious because I think Shanghai have opened this door for Chengdu. Shanghai have written the blueprint for Chengdu in terms of how they need to be Philly. Because Chengdu can play.
has to deadlift.
And he can.
Genuinely has
to.
I mean, he can. Yeah. He might.
He's got the backing of Gaga. Dude, Gaga's a better ball than Fate. Leave is comparable to Flitter. It's doable for Chengdu. The only hole in their roster is the Tyro Cookie Jimmy position. But if you can get over that, this is super doable for Chengdu because, again, you literally follow the blueprint of Shanghai. They have shown you how to beat Philadelphia. The answer is there. It's written on the wall. Chengdu simply need to follow instruction. It's written in the message.
I don't hate it. But like those are some large, super massive, one might say, black holes on this team, right? Like now we have to consider Late Young, who I can't toss, right? I'm not tossing this kid into the confidence pool. I can't throw him all that far. I still am like, you can play Zarya. That's it. Like, I'm very much in that mindset. And I could be very wrong. I've heard he's actually done quite well for Chaser in the playoffs, right? I've heard he's done...
Oh, I forgot Elsa retired. Shit.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess they won then. Sorry, I just forgot about Elsa.
It's tough. It's tough for them. I think you're right, though. I think you're onto something. They have the blueprint. If they can execute on it, and Leaf can deadlift, Taro Cookie doesn't completely look, abysmal or non-existent, and Late Young just is fine. Yeah, I don't hate it.
No, you guys forgot about Jinmu. Jinmu is their Sombra player, believe it or not.
That's true, and we don't like that.
No, Sombra's been fine. I think Jinmu's... I prefer Jinmu Sombra than his other heroes, except for when he fires this. Yes, because... Dude, this is about damage control. Would you rather have Jinmu come out on a Torb? Come on.
Okay, maybe not the Torb. Maybe that's Torb.
Torb, Farah. What do you want him to play here out of those three? Be real. Let's be real.
I think there's room for him on 2CP on Farah. But yeah, outside of that, it's tough. And I do not trust him on Sombra, though.
It's got to be Leave, Tracer, Jinmu, Sombra.
I think that's the go-to. I think that's what they have to do, but I don't like it. I don't like the other alternatives either, to be fair, but I guess that's what you have to do.
But it doesn't matter. I forgot Elsa's retired, so they lose anyway. Doesn't matter.
I think you're onto something, though. I don't hate it.
I was onto something until I realized Elsa wasn't going to be here, and then I was like, well, that's a bit rough. Ideally, Elsa doesn't retire until the end of the stage, and he plays all the way through, and then just retires.
They have a good shot.
And they have a good shot. By the way, do you know what this is meme territory? The heaviest boom that can happen for Philadelphia and Seoul is if Shanghai throw their match versus Valiant like I expect them to. They go 3-1, and then they get matched up versus either Seoul or Philadelphia in the knockouts, and one of those two teams will once again fail to make it to Hawaii.
Nice.
See, you guys were almost right with Seoul Charge. I'm kind of scared that this might happen.
Shanghai strategic.
Terrified that this happens.
They're not.
Oh god.
I think at this point you'd rather miss Hawaii or have lower chance of making Hawaii than lose the first match against the Valiant. I don't know if you even can take that.
Agreed.
Like, might never recover.
I told you, you can recover that instantly just by winning Summer Showdown.
Is there a shot that the Spark do something? Where like Shanghai comes out, Moon is on full force, and he's playing all kinds of goofy stuff. Like, is Who Are You still on this team?
Sure.
Throw him in there. I don't like.
Do you think this is the game they play the wacky stuff and not the one versus Valiant? Could be both.
Could be both. I don't know. It's
no. Shanghai only strategically throw to one of these two teams, and it has to be Valiant strategically. And I've explained why. I'm not going to get into detail again.
I know.
I told you why.
That's tough.
No, I don't think Shanghai. I don't think. There's no way. What is Shy playing now? He's lost his Echo. Ash is not relevant in this meta compared to what...
Solomon Sue's seeing starting time, for God's sake. God, like...
On what? What is he going to do better than what Shanghai?
Nothing. Nothing. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm agreeing with you. Like, what is Shy to do if he isn't even playing? Granted, it's one map out of the many that Shy ends up playing, but... that's such a bizarre change-up to make.
Does New York do anything? Does New York do anything?
No. God, no.
Who's their Sombra player? Do they have one?
I don't know. They all the DPS feel like faceless to me at this point.
Yes, they definitely have a Sombra player. I just can't, off the top of my head, think about who it is.
I get Flora.
Flora?
It's one of that F DPSs.
I think it's Flora. Yeah, Flora on O2 Blast was a Sombra player. Yeah, I think it is Flora.
I don't know.
I don't know. Do they go into that? They don't. And then what? Ivy plays Tracer, I guess. Is that their answer?
I guess.
We tried. Okay. I mean, actually, honestly, Yakpong Ball is probably one of his safer picks.
What is Monkey?
No, I think Ball is less punishable, and yeah, I think last time we saw New York, they were playing some Ball, and that seemed pretty decent. From Yakpong, and then
the only one is either Chengdu maybe doing some upsettery. I don't see Shanghai losing in play-ins. That just gives them another week.
I previously said, and this is if you guys agree with me, one of Chengdu or Hangzhou will make that 4th seed.
Okay.
You guys agree with that? One of those two teams will be the 4th seed that they end up playing in Shanghai. They'll lose to Shanghai.
Yeah.
It makes Chengdu and Hangzhou. This will be what we end the podcast on.
Who makes it? Let's see. So Chengdu play Philly.
Play each other, but
so it's probably going to come down to maps. If they don't lose.
I can tell you right now, they are on Hangzhou are on.
They're even.
One map. No. Chengdu have one extra map.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chengdu. Yeah, Chengdu's up one map. Spark is even in maps.
Yeah. So
Spark New York. It might be Chengdu just because they get Valiant. Like just a quick 3-0, that might be enough. Just because it's safe.
That's true.
I don't think it's a non-zero chance. Granted, then Spark has to play Shanghai.
Yeah, that's quite heavy, isn't it? I mean, you just look at the Valiant Chengdu, then Hangzhou Shanghai. It's like, come on, you couldn't have two more opposing difficulty of matches here. Like,
it comes down to who's more likely to take maps, New York or Valiant, and I think that's kind of written in stone, unless Chengdu actually takes Philly deep and can score some like needed map wins.
Let me say this: if Chengdu even win one map versus Philly, I think Spark are boomed.
Yep.
Unless. Well, Spark have to beat New York because it would require Spark to take 2 maps off of Shanghai. Even now, Spark, if they 3-0 New York and we assume Chengdu 3-0 Valley and they get 0-3 by Philadelphia, Hangzhou would need to take 1 map off of Shanghai just to go even in map score. That's a tall order.
That's not happening.
That's not even beating. That's taking a map.
Yeah. So
let alone scoring points.
Probably 4th seed. Just off the back of Hangzhou needing to get 1 map of Shanghai, right? So I think Hangzhou are done.
Yep.
Sadly.
Cool.
Yeah. Good chance that... I mean, I wouldn't count... I think New York still has a chance to even, like, throw all of those out, right? Like...
True.
You think?
Yeah, I think that...
New York just...
Brother, man.
I'm giving them the series against Spark at the moment.
Ooh. Remember, New York did lose the charge.
Yeah. No. No.
Did.
Nope. I don't know. I think there's like Spark is probably in the low point of their season at the moment. And I think that will manifest in. I don't even know who's coaching this team at the moment, to be honest.
Mentalist and whoever's listed on there.
Andante.
Andante.
I don't know if they're
Andante.
still with the team. I don't know.
And U4. Well, we know
Huh.
Mentalist is with the team, 100%.
Mhm.
Because he got signed recently.
Yeah.
Well, I say recently, it's been like maybe a month now.
Month or two, yeah.
I mean,
It is tough.
Knowing and like having, considering Spark logic is two different pairs of shoes, unfortunately.
Agreed.
This coaching staff got them the 4-0 last stage. Is coaching the issue? I don't know. Like, they got a 4-0.
How
Ben Pagiano got a 4-0.
How are you like? This is like some decay level, like no Kai, no win, no decay, no win. Why isn't Shy starting for you permanently? I get that you can play him alongside Sominsu, but like, what's the deal? I don't think this kid ever sees the bench. You're ruining greatness. You are the Goma of Overwatch right now, whoever's coaching this team.
I just don't think, unfortunately, I don't think Shy's hero pool is great for this meta. Unless, I don't think he's got a god tier tracer. His best two picks are Echo, well, three picks, Echo, McCree, and Ash, and all three don't feel as strong as Tracer Sombra. And maybe I'm being baited. Maybe I'm hard baited by Shanghai because Shanghai made Tracer Sombra look so god tier.
Yeah.
And I'm being hard baited by that. And actually, Ash, McCree, Echo are still pretty decent, just not versus Shanghai.
Yeah, I think that might be likely. That Shanghai is just diffing people with our own style, and it's just even hard to keep up. It seems like that's the case just because of what everybody else has run thus far, like Seoul running a little bit of Brawl, running some of like the bunker stuff on Junk especially versus the Charge, like running the McCree, running the Ash. I think Volsky as well, running a lot of mid to long range hit scan. Yeah, Spark's a little weird. I think if you're right and people tend to just like social dynamic adopt what Shanghai is running, maybe that is a better argument against Shy. I don't know. I've always liked this Tracer. Maybe I'm a little jaded just because of days on LGD, but
I think Hangzhou need some sort of hit scan plus what though? Plus Tracer or plus something else? I don't know. They need some.
Sombra, but
I think Hangzhou can match Shanghai's composition. They'll need to play something different, and the match they're focused on is versus New York anyway. So they're not really okay. It's getting a 3-0 versus New York and one map versus Shanghai. That's the target. So however they can do that, that's the target. It's going to be rough. Chance for final thoughts, but that's basically it, guys. So any final thoughts on anything?
Not much. Go watch the post-match interviews that Yiska's done on GG Recon. Click the ads. Go support the boy. Shout out to the real ones who get the reference.
Also, go on, Yiska.
No, I was just saying that was a good old Winston slap reference.
Reminder that next week is also the Shanghai homestand. So I guess the argument that Shanghai should probably go 6-0 at their homestand makes sense, and they probably don't want to be throwing versus Valiant live in front of their own fans. But yeah, okay, yeah, I guess that means they go 6-0. Why not? That means they have a perfect stage as well, a full 12-0 stage, no maps lost. So yeah, it'll be Shanghai's homestand during Shanghai's.
Do we count that as a golden stage? Don't mean to cut it. Is that the only other golden stage?
Regional knockout as
You
well?
could, but
You could. It depends on how we're defining it now.
I'll do it. If I'm casting both Shanghai games anyway. If they do it, I'll do it on broadcast.
Yeah, do it.
I like to give out my own personal awards.
You've already started with your stats. Why not?
I'll do whatever, man.
they should also do it in the knockouts. Like knockouts and Hawaii. Ooh.
That's almost even more impressive. Because didn't Shock lose some maps in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Is that stage 2? Yeah, had to have been.
So there you go. Make sure you watch those games. I'll be back into cast as well. I am casting Shanghai versus Valiant. Nice. So the game that I've been talking a lot about, even though I know it's going to be completely boring. And I'll be doing Valiant versus Chengdu. So nice. I got the double Valiant back to back. Then I also have Hangzhou Shanghai. So I got both Shanghai games for their homestand. And then one of the two knockout games, I don't know which one. I'm personally hoping for Philadelphia Seoul because I think that's going to be a banger. But I wouldn't mind Shanghai, Chengdu either. I'll take that. Why not? It would be the battle of the ball, battle of the who plays the ball, comp the best. Spoiler, it's going to be Shanghai. But yeah, episode 182. Done and Dustin, thanks for joining us. When we come back next week, we will have finished our regional knockouts. We'll be doing our actual Hawaii tournament preview, maybe a little bit of recap as well in terms of how the last week went, week 13. But mainly, I think it'll be a good preview episode, guys. So that's what we're looking forward to next week. Same time, same place. Thank you so much. Love ya. Peace out.